Input for and community announcements. Do we have any citizen input? No, for non-agenda item. All right, moving right along. Item number 3, new business facade improvement program. We have an application from Ebner's Custom Meats, and so I believe Tyler is going to come up and give us the presentation for that.
Good evening, Chair Varwig and Urban Renewal Agency. My name is Tyler Nizer. I'm the Economic Development and Tourism Coordinator for the City of Canby. I am here before you tonight because the City of Canby staff received an application for the Facade Improvement Program grant for Ebner's Custom Meats located at 272 North Grant Street. And the request is for the removal of all compromised siding and rot on the alley side of the building, repair and replace siding on the facade of the building, and prepare and install batten board siding, and build a new parapet in front of the building to tie into future awning that will wrap around the side of the building and tie into the building of the new roof line of the alley side of the building. A little bit about this program. Since 2010, the Canby Urban Renewal Agency has averaged funding for 3 construction grants of up to $25,000 to encourage private investment within Canby's Urban Renewal District. This partnership with property owners and businesses helps the Canby Business District revitalize and become more inviting to tenants, residents, and customers. In 2011, Ebner's Custom Meats was approved for the facade improvement grant for dramatic impacts to the building exterior, adding several windows to the structure and upgrades to the paint. Their total project cost was $45,428, and they received $22,714 from the Urban Renewal Agency at that time. The facade improvement program allows a business or property owner to apply for up to $25,000 per fiscal year for the facade of the building that can be seen from the street. And there has begun exploratory work done to discover total damage that has been made in the siding and framework. The damage has been temporarily mended with plywood and remains at this time. The economic development staff has worked with the applicant, so they are aware the grant can only be utilized for work started after the approval from the Urban Renewal Agency. In addition to repairing any dry rot, the owner will further improve the exterior of the building with a new facade and paint color. And the Ebner's Custom Meats plan to use a gray tone that will complement the parapet and other features of the exterior. And the project will include upgrades to the to both the front and the side of the building, both seen from North Grant Street. And I will share with you some comments we received from the Main Street Design Committee, and that was, I think this will be a great improvement. Has there ever been talk to having a color palette for the downtown building? And as follow-up, staff provided the applicant with the website to Sherwin-Williams historic color palette, and the palette has been provided in previous applications when the color scheme is unknown or the applicant asks for input. The Sherwin-Williams historic color palette is provided as an example only, and applicants are not required to utilize the color schemes and are permitted to utilizing paint from the paint manufacturer of their choice. And we did receive additional comments after the staff report was submitted, and those were, I support these upgrades to the building, and I think it will be a nice update. This Ebner's facade improvement application is very much approved. Removing old and replacing with new is always welcome, and the parapet will add to the dignity of their business and complement street appearance. And I support this facade proposal. So all very supportive comments for the application. And along with the facade improvement program application, you received a photo of the proposed work and the contractor bids. And the fiscal impact of the Urban Renewal Agency will be a matching grant of up to $25,000. And at this time, I will invite Mike Ebner up to provide further details on the project, and he could provide any additional questions you guys might have. So, answers to the question. And up here, we also displayed a picture of what the completion is proposed to look like.
Proposed to look like, yes, the everything that we are looking at, minus a sign, that is still in limbo. Definitely, we will take the characters out of that and try to go more modern with our new, I think it would be like the squared Edner's logo. So yeah, if you don't know, if you haven't been in the shop, we have torn the entire place that inside out, and we want the outside to match. So this is why we have applied for this grant again this year. And I think it's gonna really jazz up downtown a little bit.
Great, thanks so much, Mike and Tyler, appreciate it. Any questions, Mayor Hodgson, you have?
Yes. This is the second grant you guys have come and asked for, correct?
I think we did the first one in 11,
Yeah, 2001.
2011.
Okay.
That was just to paint and do what have you. And then this building was built in 1947. And I jumped into a deep hole, and we are filling all them up. I literally think that we have 2 walls inside left to replace, repair, and I want the outside to keep up with the inside. And I would take anybody around and show you what we are doing. It's pretty amazing inside, and I want the outside to keep up with it. And you know, that burnt orange color downtown Canby is not so good. So let's jazz it up is kind of what we're looking at.
Might have been good in 11, but not so much anymore,
Yeah, it was
right?
good 11 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It was an improvement
Good 11
then.
years ago.
Mr. Nizer, we don't have any stipulations in our facade program on time in between requests for facade improvement.
What's currently stated is that it can only be one approval application of $25,000 per year, so they could come back in next year
Okay,
and come back to it.
thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, so I'm so happy you're doing this. I'm a big fan of your store and your product. And I used to go there when I was a kid, and it was old Fisher's.
Right.
It's a market. So I'm really pleased with this. I think it looks great. You know, we were accused, accused is maybe not the right word, but described by a consultant one time as being Beigeville. And it's so nice to see some buildings coming in that are not beige or some variety of tan. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that you're going for a modern look, and I cannot hold you to this and don't expect you to take my advice, but I would love if there's a pop of color on it somewhere, so that we do not become Graphiteville over time. So just anything to differentiate the building would be great. A pop of color. Do what you want at your building. You know, I appreciate the work you're doing. I love it. I'm a fan, but that's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, this was, the color scheme is not set in stone. This is just what we thought would look nice, right? And I mean, we can change something, we can add some accent somewhere, but yeah, as of right now, this is what we came up with in a short period of time.
Yes, sir.
Well, like everyone up here, I think, we're thrilled. We're thrilled for you and for your success. And really, the Canby Renaissance began, you were one of the first people to make use of our facade program. And there was just rolling thunder after that for the First Avenue and Second Avenue improvements and so on. So you really were a pioneer, and you believed in Canby at a time when there were just tumbleweeds blowing through the street.
Yeah.
No one yet has mentioned that this is going to add to the view of the new Italian restaurant that's going to be built across the street from you with its second-story outside patio.
Right.
So I'm thrilled for this, and just wanted to thank you for all of that you've given to this town. I know that your sponsorships run deep in this town,
Real deep.
so thank you, and I heartily endorse this.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Hensley?
Thank you, Chair Farwick. I had some questions for Tyler before this, and thank you for answering my questions promptly. I've really appreciated your answers to my emails. I am for this project. I did ask the same question that Mr. Hodgson did regarding the time frame, because I did recall I was sitting here for the first approval. So I wholeheartedly approve of this. 11 years is a long time. But aside from that, and not really related to Mr. Ebner, I would like to readdress the annual, though. I think that annually might be a little much to offer for the URD dollars. So in another session, I would like to address that and maybe extend that to where it's 5 years or more. So,
Wonderful.
but aside from that, I like it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that's something that staff, we can work on, possibly addressing that, so. Mr. Marine,
Can you refresh my failing memory? When did you acquire the property?
I believe it was in 11.
Okay, so you were got the first grant right out when you first acquired
Yeah, I
it.
think it was right out the get-go. Yeah, I started working in that building in 2000. And then we took over in 11, so.
Well, I'll throw my support in behind this too. This is
appreciate it. Thank you.
fantastic. I really like it.
Commissioner Banks,
I'd like to make a motion.
I will take it.
I move to approve the matching grant of up to $25,000 for Ebner's Custom Meats under the guidelines of the Canby Facade Improvement Program.
Well, second.
All right, so it has been moved and seconded to approve the matching grant of up to $25,000 for Ebner's Custom Meats under the guidelines of the Canby Facade Improvement Program. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, it passes
Thank you very
unanimous.
much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you for all that you guys do, and thank you for a beautiful building.
Thank you.
All right. Next on new business is an update on the mural program. Jamie Stickle will be giving us an update.
I have a short presentation and I'm going to pull that up quickly. Great. So Urban Renewal Agency, I'm Jamie Stickle. I'm the Director of Economic Development and Communications Specialist for the City of Canby. Tonight, I'd like to review some of the aspects of the mural program, which was recently, we had added funding, $50,000 for, in the 2022-2023 budget. The program was originally created in 2011, and unlike our facade improvement program, has never actually been used. We applied some of the documents to the Hanlon mural, but there was no city funding that was applied to that. It was just a way for the continued public-private partnership to also apply to the mural. It was approved via ordinance 1341, which created chapter 2.80 in the Canby Municipal Code. And I'm noting that obviously because that is how the program is formed, but also to note that the questions that I have for tonight or the discussion pieces for tonight are none of them are suggesting to actually change the code, which would take quite a long time, or it could take a long time. If something were to change that amended that code, then we would need to come back with an ordinance to amend that. Additionally, the reason why we wanted to come back before you is that the original program included input from the City Council and Urban Renewal Agency. The reason I included both of those is it was listed, both of those were listed in the original program document, as well as the Planning Commission. So we are, as I said, we're seeking additional details that are not included in the code, not explicitly outlined in the program documents. And so I'm just providing the headings that we're kind of reviewing about membership, deadlines, funding. If we would like to have, if we get so many mural applications that we'd like to have some priority projects, kind of starting to have that conversation of what that could look like, and then additional considerations. So as far as the committee members go, it lists in the program that artists, art advocates and professionals, business owners, city staff, and a representative from the Main Street Design Committee those are what is required to make up the committee, but the number of committee members itself, whether that is 7 like many of our boards and committees, or more if it's something that we think that we would need more, the different categories listed, there's 5 there. Arguably, we have business owners in our downtown that are also art professionals and advocates, or artists themselves. So you could really whittle it down to 3. But if I'm hoping to kind of get some, head nods and or input on if you guys would like to see a 7-member committee, and I'll go through these points and then we can kind of run back through if anybody has any thoughts. But if the city council or urban renewal agency would be actually appointing the members to the committee like they do for our other boards and committees. And then if more applications are received than spots available, will the urban renewal agency determine who is appointed? Would it be first come, first served? Melissa Bissett said that we are able to utilize the volunteer management software that we do for our other boards and committees, even if this is something that is for a limited duration until the end of the urban renewal district. So I can run through these slides pretty quickly and we can go back and start to discuss, or we can discuss on if anybody has any thoughts on any of these. However you'd
Vice Chair
like.
Hanson,
Well, I was just gonna say, it'd be okay by me to finish the slides and then we can come
Perfect.
back to this.
Perfect.
Let's do that.
So then for deadlines and meetings, would we like to have one deadline for applications, meaning, in 1 month from tomorrow, so, so that we can update the program with this information that we'll decide tonight. We could ask for applications from property owners or interested applicants. It could be a rolling program, such as the facade improvement application. Arguably, the facade improvement application has been around now for, since 2010, I believe. And so a lot of that is because people are aware of it since the program itself markets itself. The building looks great and that funding happened to be paid for by this program. Or could possibly be a kickoff meeting and then at will, meaning we kick off a meeting and maybe the committee says, we'd like to see murals on these buildings or these properties. And then there's an attempt from the group to get approval from the property owner. And then, if we spend 40 out of 50,000, then it could be at will and those meetings could be only as needed. I am looking at a group of people who have probably more meetings on your calendars than you know what to do with, or that you would probably like to attend sometimes. So I don't want to have meetings just to have meetings, but I think that there could be even some sort of mixed matched view. And then additionally with funding, obviously there's $50,000 that is allocated, but it does not state how much can be put towards one mural or one project. So should there be a cap per project? The program does list that the Urban Renewal Agency will fund 100% or in part. And then would we like to do a reimbursement on paid invoices? And that's something that we do with the Facade Improvement Program. I think that's something that works very well with the Facade Improvement Program. And I don't think that while that might have been an idea before, but now seeing, for myself 10 years in, I think that that's something that works pretty well. Who receives the funding and when? The applicant can be, as long as you get property owner approval, the applicant can be an artist. So you could have an artist who says, I'd like to do a mural on this building, and then get the approval. But if we are reimbursing or even paying, does the money go directly to the artist, directly to the property owner? It could be dependent on who actually applies and what that looks like. And then the when, the program, I put this at the bottom, but the original program actually states that, I'm sorry, I took that aspect out. It says that the reimbursement or the funding starts to get going on the city side as soon as the approvals are all in place, meaning the easements and those kinds of things. But I guess if we're paying on reimbursements, then it doesn't make sense to necessarily get that check ready in the beginning. It is possible that with a program like this, that for the different aspects, that people might need money up front. something to keep in mind as well. And then can an applicant utilize mural funding for a project that is advertising and marketing? And earlier, when we were pulling together this PowerPoint, Tyler and I were discussing, and he said, well, what could that look like? Just Canby Cinema on Canby Cinema. But a great example, I think, and a nice looking mural is actually on Canby Builder Supply that boasts their 75 years. Technically, that's kind of advertising marketing, but it also ties into their business, which ties into Canby. It's, I will pick on my friends, the Ebners. I was hoping that they were still here. But if they were to utilize funding and to put farm animals on the side of their building, arguably that could be advertising marketing, but that's also very true to Canby and to its roots. We are an agricultural community. Additionally, the program states that applicants and/or artists may be funded one time only in each fiscal year. This also ties into the end of the topic of conversation at the Facade project that we just discussed. But also, would we like to keep that written the way that it was originally stated for artists? There could be some merit to bringing in an artist who might do 2 or 3 murals with this program that complement each other but look different, and maybe they somewhat tie into advertising marketing, or maybe on one building they have flowers, and on another it has farm animals, and on another, but it's all made in the same genre. Or there could be a lot of value in having murals that all look different, and not requiring that there's not allowing for an artist to come back and fund more than once in each fiscal year. Again, so the original program lists items not eligible for funding, which is always an interesting thing, is when you just list no. So we were thinking that we could list kind of what it is eligible for. And the reason that I included this is it talks about operating costs for organizations, purchase of equipment, administrative costs for sponsoring organizations, costs related to the project that have already taken place, refreshments, meals, and beverages. And all of those, except for one, I think, okay, I don't know, I think that that's all great. But purchase of equipment, it does not specifically say what equipment that means. So if it's purchasing a boom truck that you're going to use for your construction business that you also happen to use when you're painting a mural, sure. But does that mean paintbrushes or drop cloth? A drop cloth would protect the city's streets, which helps to protect, investments made that could be made by the city or by property owners of days before, years before. So just another item to consider. And then if we would like to give priority to specific projects, for instance, the location. The Urban Renewal District spans downtown, Highway 99, and in the industrial park. So, would we like to see any specific weight and applied to any location? The size, what if it was a 10 by 10 versus an entire building side? Would we like to weight something like that? The requested amount. So if there's not a cap, or if it's not, $10,000 for every project, then and there's a match, would we like to weight and highlight a priority project of that it's a 50% match, or maybe the requirement is a 50% match, like the facade improvement program. And then community-based versus advertising, that could also play into the prioritization for moving forward. And then some additional considerations that we were hoping to get some additional input from. For instance, is there a timeline that you would like to see attached to these? What we're talking about is while the creative process can be great and grand, it's not necessarily like physical concrete construction, tearing things down. So it could be done on a quicker basis. While this might be more for Joe Lindsay, both Oregon City and Hillsborough in their mural programs, they list an insurance requirement and the requirement of anti-graffiti coating. The way that the program is written, while we have an easement on the building, so that mural is technically ours, all of the maintenance is on the property owner. So would we like to see that as a requirement? And maybe that's something that we pay up to $10,000 and we pay an additional for the anti-graffiti coating. We've had a lot of conversations recently about facade improvement projects and what that means for our historic buildings and downtown that has a lot of historic nature. So could the mural be on a historical building? And there are very few buildings on our local landmark registry, but that could have some implication. And then finally, it talks about a final report. But would you like that final report brought before you to be discussed here? And that is the end of my very quick run through.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks so much, Jamie, for that. I appreciate that. I know there's going to be a lot of questions up here. I'll just kind of give mine real quick. I know that, Commissioner Spoon and I have met with Scott and talked about trying to get this going. And I know that we're kind of at the end of the summer, and probably the question that Commissioner Spoon is going to bring up too of like, how do we get this going quickly, right? And so the question I have is, and maybe this is a Scott question as well, is what can we do temporarily to be able to start working on some of these while we determine the full scope of the program? And that's, I made a note of here, there's still a lot to determine, so I know that we can't answer all of the questions tonight. But then the other thing that I noted here is talking about the location. If this is a urban renewal program, it would seem to me that they could only be approved in the urban renewal area.
Certainly. The urban renewal area spans all three of those districts, though. So the urban renewal area goes all the way out into the industrial building. I just didn't know if let's say, again, we get so many applications. I really hope that happens, because I think that this is an incredible way to make our community even more beautiful than it is. But, if we're interested, if it's just that it's within the urban renewal district, and that's absolutely fine. Just didn't know if there was any additional, like, you'd rather see them start in downtown, and the first year we'd love to identify projects in downtown and really work on that, or Highway 99, that's more visible to traffic, and then there was a fully formed program. Some of these items aren't outlined, so it could start now, and we can, things like the number of committee people or what that looks like, we can make sure that we're checking those five, like the five things: art professionals and advocates. So that's one, artists, etc. And then, as long as we do that, we can start going and ask them to help fill in some of the rest. The reason that for bringing it back to help answer some of these questions is just also that's how it was set up in the beginning. But I'm okay with pulling together a committee and starting to get to work also.
Yeah, I think you're going to get some really good questions tonight, and I think that this kind of, Scott, would be good to bring back in a work session to really determine through all of that. But maybe some of the questions you get tonight will really kind of help work on that program for a work session. But Commissioner Spoon, your questions.
Thank you, Chair Varwig. So one of the questions you had is how much do we allocate per mural? That is a very difficult question to answer for probably a group of people that have no idea how much a mural costs. Do we have any indication? I know Oregon City just finished that beautiful one on Black Ink, White Rabbit. Like, do we have any indication of this, like how much a mural goes for these days? That we can answer that question?
Don't have an indication. I can definitely be happy to make, a couple of calls. The person who runs their program is the economic development director there. I know that when we're continuing to, I think, still budget for this, or maybe it was part of Facade. I think that originally, which is probably why I listed as an example that $10,000, that there was some thought in the Wayback Machine that would be an okay amount, but I don't know that was anything that was specific of like, this is how much it costs, or if it was more like, this is
an amount.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple of thoughts. I would think we should probably do a work session on it because there's a lot to eat into. But a couple of thoughts I wanted to share without going into the full length of notes I took was, there's a significant and notable difference between this and the facade improvement program that I would like to see shape like some of the way we address it. And that's that the facade improvement program by its very nature increases the property value of a private property owner, whereas a mural program creates public art. And so asking the burden of even 50% of the mural, like where we do a matching program for facade improvement, they're getting the direct financial benefit from the work we're doing. Whereas public art could potentially increase the property value. It could also make it less desirable as a piece of property to sell. And we're really asking a building owner to be a partner with us on something that's for the public good. So I would hate to see us require them to match 50% because it's just not the same as a facade improvement. It's philosophically a different thing, and it's a different gift to the community than facade improvement. But that also is part of my concern about requiring reimbursement on paid invoice, which is that we're asking a building owner to put up a full amount for something that doesn't directly benefit them necessarily, except for on like an emotional or experiential level. And I would rather see us allowed to pay directly to the artist or whatever that is, because I think the mural program is kind of for the public good, not for the private building owner's good. And so I think it requires a different level of partnership from the city to execute the program. And so just like kind of in broad brushstrokes, like it is, even though we kind of have to compare it to the facade improvement program because it's the closest program we have as a city, it's also very, very, very different philosophically and in terms of the benefit to the building owner and the benefit to the public good. And while he's here, Mr. Ebner, if you would like to do a mural on the side of your building as a spot of color, we would love to partner with you. But another thought about that is having a rolling deadline. Unlike the facade improvement program, like it would make sense for someone to put a mural up when they're doing other work. So obviously there's a seasonality to it, but if they're doing other work, that would be a great time for them to do the mural, right? So a rolling deadline makes more sense to me than, this is the time they all need to be in. But I have many more notes for work session, but I just kind of at a high level thought planting a seed about how it's philosophically different than facade improvement and what that means for partnership was worth noting.
Scott, okay. You'll go after that. Okay. Perfect. Go ahead, Commissioner Parker.
Well, taking the comments, excuse me, that we've had so far tonight, I'm wondering if anybody else on the commission feels comfortable authorizing staff to proceed with a pilot program to get something going. And the best way to do something is to actually try it. The thing I was afraid of both with this and the microgrant program is that the amount of effort that it was going to take to bring this up was going to delay it. There are some legitimate questions. Jamie, I loved the presentation. Again, this is one of those optical exams. Do you want this or this? And it makes it so much easier for policymakers to focus in on where you need our support. We're already past the time when we need to start for the city council meeting. The clock is broken, and it's going to stay 8:20 for a long time. But that would be my suggestion, if anybody else likes that, of saying go out, use your good judgment, don't spend it all at once. But I think in the very process of going out, soliciting information, of hiring people, that you're going to be more educated and be able to bring back to us. You're going to be able to answer some of these questions on your own, saying, okay, we went out here, we found that they needed drop cloths, they needed this, whatever. But it's a learning process, and I don't think this is an open heart surgery. No one's going to die if we don't get it right the first time. So that's my proposal on the table is. We need a work session, but I hate dragging things out because we have such a huge backlog of work sessions. I'd like to see something get going now if we could.
Well, maybe a pilot program would be starting on maybe a city building, and I happen to know there's a big brick wall on the opposite end of this building that might look good with the.
Well, just to put a kind of final point on that, I think actually Commissioner Parker teed it up pretty well what I was going to say, which is if the Urban Renewal Commission is comfortable with directing staff tonight, we can certainly implement something, I like the idea of calling it a pilot program, even to kind of use that term. It gives it a little bit less permanency while we're working with you at a work session in the future. We have language that allows us to do this. We have an approved budget, so we have budget authority. There's nothing stopping us. I think the point of this discussion was there are some great comments already tonight without even having a full-blown work session, that I think there are some details and intricacies that we'll probably want to shape this a little bit, over time. But no, there's nothing precluding us from, if you give staff direction, I'll work with Jamie and we'll do something, at least on a shorter term basis. And ideally, if there was a building owner that wanted to be the first, that might be the best way to do this. So we could see if there's somebody that wants to do it and just try to kind of sort out some of those details, because I think there's things that we don't know yet either.
Vice Chair Hodson.
Well, maybe a counter suggestion would be if we could determine the number of people on the committee and get the committee put together, the committee can actually go through and come up with a first blush of about 80% of this and bring it back to us in that capacity instead of a work session on our end. I mean, to me, I would say, a committee of at least 5 people to get it going, and then and start ticking off some of these questions, and then bring it back to either us as the agency or a city council. So, but, I'm not married to it, so.
Commissioner Spoon.
Yeah, I like that idea, Mayor Hodson, of having the committee flush some of this out. I think I would like to see the first building be a privately owned one, even though I'd love to see some city buildings have murals, just because I think we need to learn something about the process of working with a private building owner as a pilot program. And I think that will help flush out some future understanding about the commitment level and desire of the building owner. I do think I would love to see a mural there, but I think we need to learn about working with the private building owner, the landowner, in the process of the pilot program. So I really like doing that. And I think 5 people, I think they can flesh it out. So I would love to give direction in that way. I'm all for that.
We've got a new arts committee that's been jumped on the scene and has done some great work. And I think that would be the first group I would start with in terms of asking their involvement and or recommendations from that group of artists in our community. And that could get fleshed out pretty quick.
Commissioner Banks.
I like both of those ideas, the pilot program, although I want to call it the palette program. And maybe not for all $50,000. I don't know how much the mural costs, but do we throw all of those eggs in that basket? I don't really have a weigh in on that. But I also like the mayor's plan to put together that committee. I was just going to recommend that perhaps somebody from the Heritage and Landmarks Commission serve on that committee, and then they can address those. I don't know how many meetings they all want to attend, but given the nature of the downtown area of Canby, I'd like to have them address those questions about, is it okay to paint this building or not, rather than us.
So Scott, do you need us to make a motion to start a pilot program, or do you think you can do that under the existing program?
We can, and I think I'm seeing consensus and head nodding, it seems, so I don't have any concern there. I guess the one question I would ask is regarding the committee, and I do also like the idea that I think the committee just gives it some better, validity and different viewpoints versus having a staff person have to make these interpret, art is it's up to the individual, right? And there's that whole thing. Are you comfortable giving me the authority to work with staff to just put a committee together that we think would be representative to the best that we can figure out, so that doesn't delay? Because otherwise we'd have to seek the members, bring them back for your blessing, and then start. That kind of takes one more thing out. Whichever you're comfortable with is fine with me. I just wanted to confirm what you're asking on that.
It looks to me like we're getting quite a few head nods on doing it that way. Okay. So, Commissioner Spoon.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. Are there any thoughts from council on, if given the opportunity, prioritizing for the pilot mural a downtown building? That would be my interest, but I'm not. If we can't find a downtown business owner that wants to participate, I'm not. That would be my first choice. So I don't know if there's.
I would say downtown or along 99.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. 99 seems like the most likely to me, but I just want to see murals.
Big fat
So I'm,
mural on Columbia Distribution.
so Chair Varwig, I'm comfortable with what the direction we've received by consensus. Jamie and I can work on this, and we'll work towards something with more permanency to bring back to you to refine what we've already got, but we'll roll that out. And just the last comment I have is regarding the funding. Somebody has made an excellent point that, yes, this is funded through urban renewal. That was the discussion that we had and how we funded it. But going forward, we can certainly expand that by having the city budget fund the program at some point if you wanted to, not just limit it to within the district. So just planting a seed on that one.
Yeah, I think eventually it'll have to transition
It would
to
with-
the city, and from a budgeting perspective, but also from a, who's appointing potential members to the committee like we do all of our other ones. If this is a ongoing committee or more of just like the urban renewal district committees we have for looking at the facade piece as an example.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Jamie and Tyler, thank you guys so much for the work that you guys have put
Thank you
into
all for your
this.
time.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. And Scott, yeah, go forth. Perfect. The next item on the agenda is an adjournment. Do I have a motion? Motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, stick around for our city council meeting in 30 seconds.
And Good evening, Canby. Welcome to the August 17th, 2022 City Council meeting. Thank you for bearing with us. We are running a little bit behind, but I know this group and we'll continue to be behind. Just kidding. We've got a full evening already, so we'll get into it. If you please stand for just tonight a moment of silence for our first responders and for the men and women that are out in another batch of forest fires that are going on. So we just take a moment and just reflect on that for a moment, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on our agenda is an opportunity for citizen input and community announcements. I do have, Carol, is yours about the language later up on the agenda? Thank you. Generally, this is an opportunity to address the council on non-agenda items. If you would like to address the council, please, on the back podium is a yellow card. Please fill it out and bring it to our assistant city recorder, and she'll make sure that I get it. Right now, I don't have any. I don't think we have anybody that is zoomed in for comment. Maya, have we? No? Okay. If you do wish to zoom in because you can't be here, please reach out to our city recorder or assistant city recorder, and we'll make sure that you get teed up to address the council. Since we have none, we'll move into the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes of the June 15th, 2022 regular city council meeting and the minutes of the June 29th, 2022 regular city council meeting.
Second.
So the motion's been made by Council President Hensley and seconded by Councilor Varwig to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the June 15th, 2022 regular city council minutes, and then the approval of the June 29th, 2022 regular city council minutes. Any discussion? Councilor Banks?
Can we vote on these separately?
We can.
I'd like to break them apart. I was only at one of them. My vote would be different for them.
That's fair. I will amend my motion. Mr. Mayor, I move, can I just cancel the last motion and start over, Joe? Or do I have to amend it? It seems easier just to re-say it.
You can rescind your motion.
I rescind the motion. And Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda consisting this of only the minutes of the June 15th, 2022 regular city council meeting.
Second.
Okay, that's been motioned and second to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting for June 15th of 2022. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Abstention? Thank you, sir. That passes 5-0 and 1.
And Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the minutes of the June 29th, 2022 regular city council meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the June 29th, 2022 regular city council minutes. Any discussion on those? Yes, Councilor Banks.
I'd like to amend the minutes to reflect that I was in attendance at this one.
Okay.
I'm not listed. It does indicate, I mean, like Sean and I go back and forth 6 times resetting the date for the sunset of that parklet thing. So I'm mentioned in there a bunch, but my name is not mentioned as present.
As being in attendance. Okay. So
Okay.
So if we could do that without a separate vote, I would be.
No, we can just move as amended.
Okay.
Or approve as amended.
all right, so we will approve, so approval of the June 29th, 2022 regular city council meeting minutes as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Abstain.
And an abstention. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate
He
that.
was absent.
Next on the agenda this evening is a public hearing, and the public hearing is regarding the park maintenance fee. So I will read our introduction here. So the matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. This public hearing was noticed, and those who wish to speak were instructed, to contact the deputy city recorder. We did not receive any requests to speak at this time. Those people that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please indicate your desire to speak by raising your hands at this time or handing your card to the deputy city recorder. Okay, seeing none. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. All questions must be directed through the mayor. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access. All written testimony received both for and against shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. The public hearing will be conducted as follows. We will have a staff report and then questions, if any, by the hearing body or staff. I will then open the public hearing for testimony. Proponents, so those that are for the passage of the fee, will have not more than 3 minutes, and then opponents, those that aren't in favor, not more than 3 minutes. I will then close the public hearing. There'll be additional questions, if any, by the hearing body, and then discussion by the hearing body. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice that of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedures of the hearing? All right, we will go with the staff report then on the park maintenance fee.
Mr. Mayor, I'll kick that off, and
Thank
then
you.
Jerry Nelzine, Public Works Director, Jeff Snyder now, Public Works Supervisor, are here to help answer any questions. Actually, I'll just call them up in anticipation that we're probably going to have some questions. But I just wanted to give an introduction briefly. So at your last council meeting, August 3rd, you held a work session to talk about the parks maintenance fee. You adopted the current fee in 2017. We did a full report on this, and I won't go into all the details again, but just to kind of do a quick recap. The current park maintenance fee will sunset unless you take any action on December 31st of this year, so it will expire. The discussion brought forth some questions, and we're answering those questions in the staff report. I'll hit on a couple of those highlights. And then you ended with some direction to staff, which was to bring back a couple of different options for ordinances for you to consider tonight, and I'll talk about that. The fee, the two options that you asked for were to have kind of a couple of ordinances that are going to be in your next agenda item that are either to extend the fee by 5 years or extend it with no date, so indefinite. Of course, you can choose to take no action, and that would just allow the fee to sunset. There was some discussion around the use of what the use of the fee is, and we have clarified that in the staff report. Essentially,
it's the top of it's right after the background.
What's that?
Where it says background.
Yes.
Yeah, it's under this chapter, fees collected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. The fees collected will be used to maintain, repair, and reconstruct city parks, and that I believe is that language in the ordinance?
It is.
Yeah. So that's directly from the ordinance. What that means in sort of general terms is we use that for parks maintenance needs. Currently, we have some of our staffing supported by the fee. We buy equipment. We pay for some of our general maintenance needs. So this essentially supplements what we receive from the general fund for our parks maintenance needs, and it allows us to expand from the previous level of service. It allowed us to expand our parks maintenance pretty significantly, and it is an important revenue for us to continue that level of service. And even going forward, we're going to have, as you know, some additional parks continue to be added and adding to our maintenance inventory. And we'll be talking about that with our Parks and Rec master plan in just a little while. So staff is recommending that you consider one of the options to extend. And of course, that's the pleasure of the council, but we believe that it is a very important fee. The Parks and Recreation Board also recommended to you to consider extending it for 5 years. I think there's some language that you extend it for 5 years or until such time that you might have alternate options as maybe guided by the Parks and Rec master plan, which you'll hear about later. So that was from your Parks and Recreation Board. The other, one of the other questions that came up, or a discussion point, was around our urban renewal agency and the increase in our tax increment that we will see once that district closes. And so I think there was this idea of will our general fund increase to a level that we could consider reducing or eliminating this fee at some point. So I sent the council a memo on this a couple of weeks ago or so, but I'll just reiterate that here tonight for your reminder and for the public. Are anticipated at what we know today with the tax increment that has been generated by new developments and doing the things that urban renewals agencies do. We have anticipated that if we were to close the urban renewal agency now, or we're projecting that out when it's projected to close in 25, 26, approximately $1 million in additional revenue to the general fund. There is a little bit of a kind of an asterisk to that, which is we currently, the Urban Renewal Agency contributes currently $350,000 to the Economic Development Department operation. So that transfer goes into the general fund. So the assumption is when the Urban Renewal District closes, that we would, if we were to continue the Economic Development Department in its current capacity, that $350,000 would be reduced from that additional $1 million. So there's basically a $650,000 net that we would see for our general fund in what we know today. That could go up pending further developments and things that are going to continue to happen in the Urban Renewal Agency. So that was a point of conversation that you asked for some additional information. Again, this is the public hearing portion of this for you to hear testimony, but we're giving you the staff report now, and then your next agenda item will actually have those two ordinance options that we can review again with you in a little bit more detail, but we would be happy to answer any further questions you have.
Councilor Parker?
Just to go back to the element you discussed about what this could be used for. So this means we're not going to have any confusion or further discussion about whether this is only restricted funds to backlog.
No, so it says specifically, and this is from it says under this chapter, the fees collected shall be used, so there's a shall, be used for activities that include administration and collection of park maintenance fees. So you can use a little bit of the money to actually, that goes towards collecting these things. Preventative maintenance, rehabilitation and reconstruction projects, design and inspection of such projects, park condition monitoring and assessment, and staff training and consultant services in support of such activities. So I know that is a mouthful, and there are categories that might be a little more broad, but it isn't just the backlog.
I just wanted to try and take one argument off of the table forever, so thank you.
Councilor Spoon?
That was a mouthful. Is that in our packet? Because I didn't see that.
Yeah.
What page is that?
It is the...
It was a very large packet though, so I'm sure.
Well, I'll try to figure out, it's page, hold on, let me move it, 14 of 365. And it's
Okay.
first paragraph under the background.
Right,
Hi-
so-
yeah, in the
Here's what's confusing is that we have used it for new build projects, but it actually sounds like those aren't technically allowable. Like it's not a reconstruction project. So if we use it to build like a picnic shelter or something like that otherwise didn't exist, that wouldn't have been an appropriate use of the funds, by the way. It's defined, correct?
Well, it says maintain, repair, and reconstruct city parks. So.
Right.
I mean, if by repairing them, you're putting in, say, a better shelter.
But if there wasn't a shelter there before, like if it's a
Yeah.
new,
Well, and this goes, because I know you made this point the last time we met.
Yeah.
Which is, any expansion that increases capacity of
Could be an SDC.
yeah, could be used, SDCs
Yeah.
could be used.
No,
So-
I just-
So those two should be able to work in tandem so that we
Understood.
do a better job of spending the
Yeah.
SDCs, the point you made last.
no, my question
Yes.
is, we've used this fund to do things that we could have used SDCs for, but there were other limitations. Totally understand. Happy with all the projects we've used it for, not upset. Just for clarity moving forward is what I'm looking for. Something like constructing a picnic shelter that has not existed there before technically doesn't qualify. It's not a reconstruction project. It's like there is no language that would allow that kind of build. Am I misreading?
No, the purpose of having these funds is to spend them this way.
Okay. So moving forward, we have at least that clarity on fund usage. I love every project we've used it for. I don't, no complaints there. Just want to make sure that we have clarity on usage moving forward.
Any other questions for staff on anything from the two gentlemen at the table? Do you want to add?
You're gonna let these guys off so easily.
The picnic shelter at Locust too, we haven't paid for yet, Counselor Spoon, so maybe we could, since it hasn't been constructed or started quite yet, maybe we could look into that too and use more restricted funds and watch that in the future.
I want it to happen however you need to make it happen. I know there's been confusion as a board and as a city on usage, so I was just trying to get some clarity.
Yep, we agree.
Do whatever you need to do to build it. I'm happy.
Okay.
And Mayor.
No other questions or, yes, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor, I should have added one more thing in my staff report too, which was the purpose of the public hearing, as you probably know, is because you're considering the potential for a fee change or a fee increase. That's why we have to do the public hearing part of this.
Thank you. Okay, then I will open up the public hearing. So proponents, I don't think we have any proponents or opponents for this fee hearing right now. So I will close the public hearing and then open up to council for further questions and discussion. Councilor Banks.
I'd like to make a motion. I move to adopt ordinance 1582, amending Canby Municipal Code 335090 subsection F regarding the expiration of parks maintenance program to a second reading September 2nd with no sunset.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Counselor Bangs and seconded by Counselor Marine to pass ordinance 1582, a continuation of the fund parks service levels with the option 2, which is to have it be no sunset. Discussion. Any discussion? Counselor Marine?
The reason I favor no sunset is because we're collecting these SDCs with the intent of, in at least a portion of them earmarked for building parks. And there's no sunset on the collection of those fees. So as long as we're going to be building more parks and creating more need for maintenance, I think we need to keep this in place. We always have the option to come back and turn it off if we don't need the money anymore.
Yes, Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely think sunset is necessary. In 5 years' time, we can discuss the service levels. We can assess how much the money that does come into the general fund from the tax increment, how that helps out in the Parks Department. We might need a higher parks fee or a lower parks fee or no parks fee. And I think that 5 years is a good time to assess it, and the sunset forces that conversation where we can't tie the hands of another council except for having a sunset like that. it won't get repealed in 5 years, let's be honest. So I think they should absolutely have a sunset of 5 years and then have the discussion again.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Spoon?
Yeah, I have a question first. When do we anticipate we'll have some guidance back on funding from our Parks Master Plan process?
So is that in regard to are you talking about SDCs or just in general? That, because there was in the Parks Board's recommendation, is that what you're referring
Well,
to?
I kind of thought they were going to give us, I guess, further guidelines on or insights into not just the SDC methodology, but also the maintenance needs and what that looks like. I mean, I thought we were going to get some additional insight from them that maybe I'm missing,
There is some high level information in the master plan, the draft master plan that you'll be seeing here in just a little bit. And we can talk about that further. I would need to defer to our consultant who is here and is going to present that. But there is some high level recommendation. I would suggest that what that's going to do is create some discussion for us to have conversations with you, the policymakers, about considering any of those options and what we might want to explore. So probably going to take some time to flesh that out, I would suggest. Yeah. I know that's kind of a squishy answer, but that's
No, that's helpful. I think I could get there either ways. I could get there on a sunset in 5 years. I can get there on, I think the need for maintenance is going to be ongoing. I don't think the need for maintenance ends in 5 years. I think the question of whether or not we need more or less in park maintenance fee also doesn't happen on a 5-year basis. I think that needs to be an ongoing conversation. The 5 years is kind of arbitrary. I think the need is ongoing and permanent. Saying that it's permanent doesn't tie the hands of a future council, because a future council can undo anything, any ordinance they want at any time they want. So I don't feel like we're tying their hands. I just think the 5 years is arbitrary, and maybe it's in 2 years we need to have a discussion about the maintenance fee going up or down based on the needs and the revenue and, you know, the ever-changing cycle of property taxes and whatnot. So the 5 years is arbitrary. I do think the need is ongoing. I think the best practice for any city council would be to have a regular evaluation of any fee. So to me, like, I would anticipate, I would hope, I would only vote for future councils if they seemed the type to evaluate the needs of the fees. That seems like just part of the job. I don't think the 5-year term is necessary because it is arbitrary. I think the need is ongoing. And I would hope that every future council evaluated the need of the fee and whether or not it was set appropriately. So I could do a 5-year sunset. I mean, I could be compelled to go that way, but I think the need's ongoing. So I'm happy with doing it with no sunset and trusting future councils to evaluate the fee as necessary.
Mr. Mayor, can I just add one follow-on comment to that as a reminder to you, council, that each year in the budget process, we have you review and adopt a fee schedule, and this is included in that. So that process kind of does happen. It's combined with a whole bunch of other fees, but you do technically review that each year to determine the adoption of the fee schedule means that you do or don't collect those different fees that we propose. So just a reminder.
Councilor Parker.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. You said that a lot better than I could. We do a annual review, and remember on my list of fiscal wants is to have a more robust discussion of those fees, even if it does take another day of budget meetings. Councilor Marine makes an excellent point that this mismatch between having a pot of money that is coming in as long as houses are being built goes on to infinity. But for us to have a funding source to take care of those that is limited, it doesn't make sense. The other thing I'm thinking about our staff. We're in a labor situation right now that I frankly don't see an end to in anytime soon. And having had a little bit of municipal experience with hiring staff and keeping them around, I had difficulty keeping staff on board when there were sunsets on the funding source. It is hard to go out and recruit somebody and say, we'd like you to make a career with this city, but we can only guarantee that the funding source is for 5 years. So I don't want to make the jobs any more difficult for our HR department or Public Works for that matter. And I'm comfortable that at any point, if future city council needs to make an adjustment, we can. So I would support the motion as it was currently made.
Any other comments? I'll wait. Go ahead.
I guess I'm the only one that hasn't made a comment, so I'll make a comment on it. I have a huge amount of respect for our Parks Advisory Committee, and I believe that their recommendation was a 5-year extension. So that's what my preference would have been, is to extend it 5 years and then rediscuss. I support our Parks Department and really, want to make sure that, the maintenance can happen, but I just don't know that I can get behind a non-ending, with no sunset. So I would have liked to see the sunset.
Okay. My comment on the deal, even though I don't have a vote necessarily, is I agree. The park maintenance will be ongoing. It's in perpetuity. As long as we keep having parks as a service in our community, they're always going to need to be maintained. I like the 5-year piece because it does allow for checks and balances on a regular basis, and whether or not it needs to level out. One thing that's not been addressed and talked about is, okay, so if this is just going to extend in perpetuity, where does it stop?
It doesn't. It's in perpetuity.
Right. So it just
No one ever
continues to
repeals
goes up. I mean, if I did my calculations correctly the last time, I think 5 years from now will be, I think, right around $6 a month per house. And so where does that necessarily cap off at? And so, I mean, those are my two concerns about doing it ongoing. So, but that's my piece. So, any other comments or discussion? Councilor Spoon?
I think for clarity, and I think, if this is incorrect, let me know, but the staff report says that the Park Advisory Committee recommended an extension for 5 years or an appropriate time until there's ample information. And I think what not having a sunset does is it says, okay, we're not going to sunset it. When we get this methodology report back, if we need to redefine what that amount is, this gives us the ability to do that. I don't think that we're really going against, they said 5 years or ample time. I think we all agree we're going to continue to need a park maintenance fee. And then when this methodology and study comes out, or if we get additional insight from our consultant on what that parks fee is, we reconvene and we amend the ordinance appropriate with the recommendations from the parks consultant. So I don't really see this as disregarding. I kind of saw their intent as being like, we need to continue the park maintenance fee and then we need to reevaluate that fee when we have additional information, which is exactly what I think we're trying to do.
Well, I think having been at that meeting, the information was that in hopes that there was another funding source other than a park maintenance fee on the residents is what they were driving at. So
yeah, and if
whether that's a park district that can then absorb this into that aspect of it, that would be great.
But I
think that's the driving point.
I think that speaks to why we don't want a sunset. It could take 7 years to get a funded parks district, right? And this allows us the flexibility of having that fee in place. And then when we have when there's another funding source, then we reevaluate the fee. The idea that I think, Cappard, as there's differing opinions on Cappard, but it's been 70 years and they haven't identified a funding source. I would be surprised if that happened in the next 5 years. They're still trying to get the district set, right? We're a ways out of having a funded district, and I don't want to kneecap our staff and their ability to recruit. I don't want to stop us from using this bucket of money that the citizens are waiting for us to use to improve livability on pace with growth because we put a sunset in there. So to me, this is like the ideal way to manage all those. And when we have an alternative funding source, if there's methodology that gives us different direction, we adjust and adapt. That's what we do with everything else. So.
Well, I don't think we've been waiting. I don't think we are waiting. I think we've got things in queue, and I think we've got a master plan chock full of ideas to move forward on. And I don't know of anything that we've ever rolled back, and we, the collective, we of government have rolled back, a tax or a fee that we didn't, I don't think there's been one we've ever not liked that we've rolled back. So I think also having the 5-year piece expedites the conversation on our end to find another funding source so that it doesn't get the risk of being overturned. Because I think if we just put it out there in perpetuity, there's no impetus to try to create or find other ways to fund. So.
I do think we waited on projects because we had a sunset to it. I mean, we've talked about how we've directed staff to not hire additional people because the funding source wasn't secure. We've talked about how we did not want to pursue building parks because we weren't sure we'd have staff to maintain parks. I mean, this is an ongoing conversation we've had since we instituted the park maintenance fee. I would disagree with the insinuation that the sunset did not hold us back from moving forward. I think there have been multiple conversation points as a council where we discussed moving forward on a park, and we haven't built a park as a city in almost 13 years, and part of that's because we didn't have staff. And then when we talked about hiring staff, it was like, well, we don't know if we can hire staff because there's a 5-year sunset on the funding source for staff. So for clarity, and I don't know if I remember it different than anyone else, but that's my recollection, is that having the sunset actually prevented us from taking action as a city that allowed us to build the parks that our community expects. I think the sunset was definitely a part of that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right, I guess the motion is on the table. All those in favor of extending the park maintenance fee with no sunset?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that carries 4-2. All right. All right, that concludes the public hearing and conversation on the park maintenance fee. We'll move into ordinances and resolutions. 5A has already been taken care of. We'll move on to 5B. Ordinance considering number 1583, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to execute a contract with JB Construction and Design in the amount of $62,500 for insulating 2 public works warehouses. First reading. Is that you, Jerry?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Mr. Nelzine, please take us through this.
Yeah, so now that Canby Utility has relocated to their new facility, we inherited a lot more facility space, warehouses, and areas that we were able to expand. So we were able to move our whole parks department up into their warehouse where they stored their stuff, but it was uninsulated because they didn't need it. So we got prices on this earlier, got 3 bids, and we hope to insulate and then maybe have some sort of heat in the future to keep our facility heated and dry and all of our equipment in good shape. And the other thing is something that we were kind of looking at too, is some sort of, since it's all hooked up to generator power now, it could be some sort of facility if we ever had some sort of a natural disaster or something, we needed to house people. So we just are asking that you approve this so that we can insulate our buildings that are now 100% ours.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve ordinance number 1583, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to execute a contract with JB Construction and Design in the amount of $62,500 for insulating 2 public works warehouses to come up for second reading on September 7th.
And no second.
All right, motion's been made by Councilor Hensley and seconded by Councilor Varley to approve ordinance number 1583, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to execute a contract with JB Construction and Design in the amount of $62,500 for insulating 2 public works warehouses. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that carries 6-0. Next up is ordinance Yes, ordinance number 1584, an ordinance amending Title 16, Chapter 16.110, Historical Preservation of the Canby Municipal Code, and first reading. Ms. Stickle, good
I
evening.
did ask the Public Works Director if he wanted to take this one on, but he declined.
He declined, okay.
He handles it so well. Back before you tonight, Jamie Stickle, Economic Development Director, with proposed updates to the 16.110, the historic preservation part of the code. And these updates were part of a longer plan that was, or a longer term plan that was then stretched a little bit longer due to COVID, which was that the city's Heritage and Landmark Commission brought on a consultant, Northwest Vernacular, to update the city's preservation, or to create, rather, the city's preservation plan. And then with that, they were asked to also to create and update some of the code. We use the model code by the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office, as well as best practices, within historic preservation, and then some of our more tangible and real necessary updates that were directly for Canby. Canby is a certified local government, which by basically checking some boxes through the state, and this was set in motion before my time, but by checking some boxes with the state, important boxes, I should say, worthy boxes, it does allow us to apply for funding, and that funding has allowed us to fund the preservation plan. But before that, it helped us to fund reconnaissance level surveys, which are very simple, foundational, kind of what you see is what you get, a building that looks like it was when it was built, this many years, et cetera. Then intensive level surveys. It also helped to fund our award-winning Women's Heritage Trail program. And so really the Heritage and Landmark Commission has worked very, very diligently they were a relatively new committee. They had gone dormant, worked to kind of come back, and they found a lot of strength and a lot of might in making sure that they are doing programs and projects that are really complementary of Canby's heritage, as well as a lot of the efforts underway. Unless you would like me to, I don't know that I need to go through, as far as the discussion, each one of the different sections of the code. I'm happy to list what changes were made where. This did go before the city's planning commission at their August 8th meeting, and the planning commission, they discussed all of the proposed amendments. Some of that conversation was targeted around the 16.110.025, which addresses the appointment and composition of the Heritage and Landmarks Commission. And that was because the Heritage and Landmarks Commission is proposing the removal of the provision that a majority of the members live or work within the heritage and within the urban growth boundary. All of our boards and committees are different. Obviously, our city council is required to live within the city limits, but the effort was so that they could expand recruitment opportunities. We do not have a full board at this time. And the Planning Commission voted 3-2 in favor of advancing the proposed amendments as they were written to you this evening. So,
Jamie, what was the reasons on I can't quite pull it back up, but the reasons for the no votes at the Planning Commission?
well, the reasons for the no votes at the Planning Commission, I would say a lot of that conversation on the no side centered around the fact that if there was not a requirement for people to live or work within the urban growth boundary, which is what it says today, that it is possible that people or developers with a special interest could come in and populate that board or populate it for a time that allows them to, remove buildings with historic integrity in favor of being able to develop what they would like to, or that we could have a board that is city focused that would be populated by people that don't live here. Sorry. And I was just going to say, and also the chair of the Heritage and Landmark Commission is here tonight, as well as Carol Palmer, who is a community volunteer who have worked diligently on these efforts. Just
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Questions from staff? Counselor Spoon?
Jamie, it currently just reads that a majority of them need to live or work within the urban growth boundary. Currently, people outside of that can be on the board as long as they don't make up a majority of the board, right?
Correct.
And so if we removed that, if we remove the concept that a majority of them have to live or work within the urban growth boundary, it's possible that the entire board could be made up of people that neither live nor work in the urban growth boundary with no other indication of where they do live or work. Like it could literally be made up of people that live nowhere near here or work nowhere near here, if we approve this, right?
Correct.
Okay, but currently people outside of it can be on it just as long as that does not make up a majority of the board.
yes, and just as you were saying that, I was remembering that the Heritage and Landmark Commission Chair, Judy Drosch, also noted that some of our most active committee members at this time don't live within with a Canby address. Some of them are from Aurora, but might live here or fall into that minority of being outside.
Great, any other questions for staff?
Curiosity, I meant to go watch the meeting and I did not have time this week. What was the vote count again? At the Planning Commission? 3-2. And everybody on the board was in attendance and voting?
Well, they are down a member.
Were there any abstentions is my question?
No.
Planning Commission.
Oh, my question, it comes from the fact that the Planning Commission, the chair of the Heritage Commission is also on the Planning Commission, and I kind of feel like it's a conflict to vote on this particular piece. So I don't think that there should have been an abstention in that meeting, in my opinion. I think there should have been. I mean, yeah, maybe she could lend to the conversation, but she absolutely should have abstained from voting on this because she had, but not that it would have then not passed potentially, but in my opinion, there should have been an abstention because there was a vested interest.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay.
I would make a motion, but I would like to amend it. So hold on one second from the proposed motions. Let me get to the proposed motion. I think that's what you're looking for, probably some forward movement on this conversation.
Just any
Yep.
question?
I have moved to propose ordinance 1584, an ordinance amending Canby Municipal Code 16.110, historic preservation, with amending the removal of changing the requirement of members of the HLC board
I'll second
for a second reading on September 7th, 2022.
Okay,
Second,
so
then have a question.
with amending the removal of, so what is it that you're not wanting to have in?
Changing the requirement for residency of the majority of the board. If we get rid of that change to this,
The rest of the.
I can get behind all the rest of it.
I second that.
Yeah.
So with amending of the
Removal of the changing of the requirement for residency for members of the HLC board.
May I was going to say, is it, I don't know for these purposes, and I might be out of line, but so that is 16.110.025A. That would be the only.
That's perfect. It's not designated as A in the staff report, so I wasn't sure how to refer to it.
Right.
Yep. I'm comfortable with the second change, for example, of 110.025. So removal of A.
Yeah, so the membership requirement would remain as it is now. Yeah,
But everything else I can get behind.
yeah, I'll second that.
And Jamie, again, what was the noted?
It's 16.110.025A is where that provision lies.
16.1100125, 2 zeros in there?
10. Oh, no.
16.110.025. Sorry.
Okay, before I ask for any discussion, I do have Carol Palmer that wants to address us on this matter. Carol, did you want to?
Do you want me to move?
No, that's okay. And I have no notes, so how I'd like me. But this is a really, I'm going to apologize to staff right now. I think if the city is going to put restrictions on who can be on boards and on commissions, that you need to get your act together in terms of recruiting. We have a very minimal recruiting program here. I mean, you folks all do a great job one-on-one. I know we post like we should, but those people that we talk to that maybe are interested in what we've got and maybe interested in being a volunteer, there is nothing on any of the volunteer websites that tell you anything that attracts you and makes you want to be on a committee. It's very difficult to find folks that are, and again, apologies to the staff, you only have so many resources. We've been through the pandemic, we've been through the great resignation, I almost called it a great recession. I'm losing my voice. But I think we really need to, before we change policy, and I know you're not changing policy, but you're putting restrictions on, we need to go back and rethink that process. There are some cities around here that do a fabulous job of recruiting. Lake Oswego, for example, if you go to their website, there's a photo so that you actually see, oh, there's committees, there's people, they're doing things. We have tons of photos of our committees doing work, and sometimes it's just in meetings, but still that, people get interested in that. They think, people are there, they're in a meeting, they're making decisions, I might be able to contribute to that. So I would just say that, and one of my favorites is, if you go to the Heritage and Landmark Commission page and you're interested in volunteering, you know what's at the top of the page? The code. No, the code has never motivated anyone to want to be on a committee. So I know I'm not telling you anything you're not familiar with, but I'm asking you to just rethink this one. Let's take a second. Maybe the best policy long-term is exactly what you're describing, where everybody on every committee has to be in the city, or at least a majority have to be. But I think until we have a chance to change the process so that we're doing a better job of recruiting, again, I ask that you not accept the amendment.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, Carol.
You bet.
So we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion?
Carol, I respect you so very much. You know, I'm like your biggest fan. I'm sure we're all your biggest fan. I guess I can't take the biggest spot. I'm a huge fan of yours. I completely agree, and I value your feedback in terms of our process and how we can better attract volunteers. I don't disagree with you one bit. And I just want to say, like, support you in that, and to staff, with all of your free time, can you find a way to, or is there something we can do to improve our recruiting process and make it appear more desirable and enticing to join a board and committee? Because I think you are exactly right. I mean, every time I go to a website and all I see is code, and people are motivated by pictures, it's 2022. It's fun to be on some of these boards. And so, yes, I agree with you. I'm going to stand by my amendment because I think it's important to the integrity of the work that our boards do, that they are citizen committees. They are supported by city funds that are paid by city taxpayers. I think there's a component to that city staff should be doing the work of Canby citizens. And part of that is having the advisory boards be made up by a majority of people that pay city. That's just important to me on a philosophical level, that the work being done by the committees and by the staff that support the committees, or that the work of the staff that support the committees is being done for citizens and people that live in the city. So I totally respect where you're coming from, and I don't disagree with you. And I wish it was easier to recruit. You're not the only committee that is lacking members. And I think that we can do both. I think we can withhold the integrity of our boards and committees and their residency, and also do a better job recruiting. And I'll commit. I feel like I work really hard to find volunteers, but I'm sure I can do a little bit better. And I'll commit to being part of that change as well, and try and help you find some people.
Any other comment, discussion? Okay, so the motion on the table is approval of ordinance 1584, an ordinance amending Canby Municipal Code 16.110, the historic preservation with amendment of the removal of 16.110.025A, the sentence, a majority of Heritage and Landmark Commission voting members shall reside or work inside Canby's urban growth boundary, et cetera. But, so that's not unstricken, that's
That remains.
that remains. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
That carries 5-1.
Tracy did.
Tracy did. Yep. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda this evening is, thanks, Jamie. Receive recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and consider resolution number 1376, a resolution adopting the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Mr. Potter is here to present.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Ryan Potter, Planning Manager. So tonight, this item is the 2022 City of Canby Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This is the culmination of a 1.5 year long process. The premise of this whole effort was that we had some foundational park planning documents that were pretty stale. They were about 20 years old, and they no longer reflected, or the plan that we currently have adopted doesn't reflect the current population, the land use patterns, the desires and wishes of the community, and just the way our community is growing. So we really wanted a new master plan to reflect the values of the community and to really reflect the city of Canby right now. So this was a 1.5 year process that involved many people and the work of many people. It was led by a steering committee that was mostly the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, but also included members of our Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. It also involved a consultant team led by Barry Dunn, who we have a representative from that firm here tonight. And then a great number of city staff, and then yourselves and a number of other stakeholders that got involved in the process. It was a process that included a great deal of public involvement. There was a series of focus groups, stakeholder interviews. There was 3 public forums that were held throughout the process. And perhaps most importantly, there was a large public survey that was done to really try to capture the wishes and desires of the community. Over 1,000 people responded to that survey, so we're confident that that reflects a good cross-section of the community. And so the decision before you tonight is whether to consider adoption of the draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The master plan, as was included in your packet, includes all the analysis and findings and recommendations that came out of that 1.5 year process. And together they really represent a policy direction for the city to go. The document, I think anyone would agree, doesn't have all the answers, but it's a policy direction for the city to go into, and it leads us into some further steps as we try to build parks, operate parks, and also programming and activities that happen in our city. Accompanying the plan itself, so your decision to consider tonight is adoption of the plan, but it's also got with it a list of priorities that came from the Parks and Rec, or the steering committee rather. This was a task that came out of the joint session between yourselves and the steering committee. The idea that this plan should really facilitate some capital improvement planning. And so the first step of that is these lists of short, mid, and longer term projects that the steering committee would have submitted to you for your consideration. And so the next steps after adoption of the plan, if that's what you choose to do, is to continue with the SDC methodology, which was paired with the master plan. That part's still in motion, and so that would come to the steering committee and then to yourselves at a later date. But the intent is for the plan and the SDC methodology to set up the city for doing capital improvement planning and picking pieces of our grand vision for Parks and Recreation and implementing them over the next 15 or 20 years. So I'm available for questions. And then we also have additional city staff and Jeff Milkus from Barry Dunn.
Mr. Milkus, would you like to come up to the table as well? And
Welcome to Canby.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council.
good evening. Any additional input there from what Mr. Potter had put out there, and anything you'd like to elaborate on? And again, thank you for the hard work that you and everyone put into this.
Okay, yeah, I think I would just add the community engagement process was fairly robust. Again, having over 1,100 surveys allowed us to kind of slice and dice the data and put particular emphasis on underserved communities and particularly the Hispanic Latinx community. We were able to really understand and identify some things in there. There are really some needs and some desires that you'll see in the plan, and some of those are have to do with new master plans and additional study and such for different park spaces, such as Waite Park or Community Park. But at the same time, you've got some other areas there that are really important. They aren't as much fun as building new parks, but things such as the required Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan was something that we identified within the master plan that really needs some attention. But throughout the last year and a half, just very pleased with the support from the city, and your community was very engaged. And the plan is full of opportunity, and that's, I guess, how I would leave my my comments.
Okay. I appreciate the Parks Board and their recommendation pieces that they put together, but I also, Mr. Milkus, I think it's page, it's 106, 107 in our packet, but there's a list of objectives and goals that you've called out there as part of this report. Would you care to touch on any of those or expand on those objectives that you have identified as part of this master plan?
What page is it?
I'm looking at 107 in the council packet.
Oh, the council packet?
Yeah, so it's,
Yeah, it's not,
sorry, it's
not of the plan itself. Yeah.
recommended goals and objectives.
Page 8 of the plan.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I got confused there by the different page numbers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there were 4 goals that were that came out of the study and came out of the research. And those goals are based specifically on what we called the key issues that were identified during the engagement in the survey. And each of those are unique in and of themselves to a certain extent, but some of the objectives within those goals kind of rely on some others. So to give you an example, we believe that your city has now grown up to the point where a full-fledged recreation or parks department, or at least a dedicated individual professional administrator probably is appropriate for this community. In order to move some of the action items forward, that becomes then a prerequisite. Some of the action items would be very, very difficult without that individual. And I, am recommending that those action items not become other duties as assigned, just because it's a lot of work, and you need an advocate in the community as your community continues to grow. The other comment I would make on these are that Again, there's some very specific, park-specific opportunities. Everything from, there's benches that are needed in certain parks, but then the overriding requirements that we recommend, things like the master plan, again, for Waite Park and for Community Park, looking at the Dodds property is what we called it. Those are all really important, and you can see the level of service based on the scoring that we did in the report can tell you if for a particular area of the city or part of the community you want to increase the park experience, then you can see which parks need infill or which opportunities are available. And I think that would be the only other comments I would make.
Great. Thank you. Councilor Parker?
Well, I appreciate you being here. I don't have any questions for you. I mean, I think before this meeting, this was the 5th time now that I've read some version of this. So I'm pretty content on moving ahead. And I'm just wondering how many other councilors remembered what we had agreed to at this point of accepting the master plan, of seeking input from our Parks Committee, got it down to 1 page, yay, and then turning this over to our administrator, who, for a lot of reasons, this was one that I really wanted to hire him because of his background in parks, and to bring us back an action plan within the constraints of our budget, within the conversations that you've heard us talking about for the past couple of years, so that we can start getting stuff done. So that would be my suggestion. I'm ready to move ahead, turn this over to Scott with the recommendations from the Parks Committee, and within his spare time, Scott can return to us in as fast as you can, with at least a starting point of saying, here's where we need to get going. Because the way I kind of see this, and it was funny rereading this today, this became clear, is that there are multiple tracks. I think our Public Works Director has pointed this out to me, that there are some projects that are going to take 5 years to do. Instead of waiting until you're ready to do that, you go ahead and get the initial stuff started. And then you work on some other tracks with our maintenance and things like that while we're doing the other things. So that's all I had to say. Thanks for being a part of this community and helping us get this done.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve resolution number 1376, adopting the 2022 City of Canby Comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan as submitted.
Second.
Motion's been made by Council President Hensley and second by Councilor Spoon to approve resolution number 1376, a resolution adopting the Parks and Recreation Master Plan as submitted. Any further discussion? Councilor Banks.
I just have a question. It strikes me that there's 2 things that were in the document. One of them was the 300 pages Parks Master Plan. And the other one was the 2 pages Parks and Rec Committee priority list. Are we approving them carte blanche? Is it just the master plan and the priority list is not the same thing? Yeah. Okay, I was just wondering how that worked.
Yeah, just to be clear that question is answered. Your action item is a resolution to adopt the master plan. The list of recommendations from the Parks and Rec Board or the steering committee and, the Parks and Rec Board making up a lot of that is kind of a supplemental, just a recommendation for you to consider as you start to enter into that next phase. Councilor Parker talked about, and yes, that was also, to your point, Councilor Parker, that was my intention, was this is step one of, this is sort of the end step of the doing the plan, and then it's into step one of the next phase, which is really where the real work begins. Not to suggest that a lot of work hasn't been done, it has, but than the implementation. So you're not adopting any of those priorities given to you. Those are recommendations for us to consider. I think they wanted to present those to you as you think about the master plan.
Yeah, and I appreciate the list. I was just confused why we were voting on it. I thought that was weird, but it's not. I understand now. Thank you.
Councilor Spoon.
Yeah, first off, thank you for coming in person again. I feel like we've Zoomed many a time. It's good to see you, and I appreciate you making the effort for the significance of this. I also want to acknowledge how much work and detail has been added since we last met for review, and I really appreciate the effort that went into taking the feedback from the people that reviewed it initially and filling this out with more detail and consideration. So I want to acknowledge that work, and also the work of city staff and you to engage the public, and the parks steering committee to engage the public, and how robust that conversation was. It's just a really important part of the process. And so thank you for that. I'm excited about the work you did and some of the filling in of details and whatnot since the last time we saw it. And my ask of staff is that when we go through additional processes like the diversity, equity, inclusion strategic plan, the task force and whatnot, if we can make sure that they have documents like this and we can really get their eyes on it too, to give that perspective that, because I think that's important. Like one of the short-term plans is an ADA evaluation and transition plan. Can't imagine a better group to start tackling that. So this document I think is going to be really significant as we move forward, and I'd like to see it being a part of a lot of the conversations that we have.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Milkus, thank you. It's been a process to get here. I know, COVID was fun, and the transition at your own company created its own challenge as well, but thank you for bringing this to the finish line. We do appreciate it. Ryan, congratulations. I think you've done a great job keeping this on track and bringing this in. So thank you. I think you did a great job, and the input from Jerry and Jeff there too. Thank you, gentlemen. We wouldn't be to this point without your guys' input. So great job on the staff front. So thank you. The question's been asked. I'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That master plan is approved 6-0. Thank you, everyone, on that. I appreciate it very, very much. And I'll go forth and conquer. Next on the agenda is mayor's business. A couple of things. So since we're on the topic of parks, so park committee meeting last night, just gave an update real quick. I'll run through some of the things we've been tracking. The Locust Street picnic, the picnic shelter is still coming, still looking like a September, October build out and install. Is that? Thanks. Pickleball, there were some issues with the pickleball court. So we just had some paint peeling up on the edges of the pickleball court, and then some light issues that were the edges of the painting's been taken care of, and still trying to work through some of the lighting issues there at the park. But all in all, it's still been very successful addition to Maple Street Park. Community Park Pond has received its third and last treatment for the algae pieces on there. So it's looking a lot better, and I think the third piece will really clear that up. So that's great news. The Community Park Urban Renewal District Park Project. So got a precursory look at just some of the things that we're doing there, adding parking slots, 2 new restrooms, and then a big piece is sewer lines that will run to the A-frame out there, as well as to the new restrooms, and then pump stations to take it up the steep driveway. Park maintenance fee was discussed, which we just approved. We approved earlier this evening, and then the park master plan tonight. So with the addition of the fire station there at Public Works, and then the work towards the dog park there, looking at a 4-way stop and some sidewalks added around that intersection right there. Then we had an update on the dog park. So Scott, if I'm stealing some of your thunder, I apologize. We've gone through, and then the dog park has gone through its pre-app meeting. And so we're just waiting on Clackamas County and Canby Utility about being able to do some watering and running sprinklers in the county, since the park is 70%, I think, in the county versus all of it in the city. We had to do some, in the design piece, had to do some widening to the driveway for fire to be able to get in and out, and then added parking area for Direct Link and other service companies that if they need to come out there and do work. Right now, we're looking, the drawings have bathrooms slated to be near the parking lot area versus, because it's on the city side versus on the other side, which would put it in the county. And so looking at more of a permanent structure than opting for porta potties, which I concur. So right now, there's been 4 renditions of at least just where we're at with the 30% drawing. So still has some pieces to wait on from the county, and then we've got a couple, like, it's got to go before the planning commission and a few other things. But questions for the council. One is a question came up regarding some process question that was asked from a member of the Parks Committee. So they wanted to confirm that the Park Advisory Board is going to have some opportunity to weigh in on the continued development aspects and some of the final drawing pieces. Is that still a step that we're having in this process?
Of the dog park?
Yes. Yes, that's, I guess I'm just confirming that that's still.
I would like that.
Okay. And then clarification, I think, is needed for staff on 2 things. The first one, are we planning, or do we want to hold a public meeting for the community to see the renditions of the dog park and provide input on that dog park at all? Is that part of the process that we want to include? Or?
We did it for this building, so.
Well, I know, I'm just,
It's a good idea.
again, just trying to help staff with direction here and timeline pieces.
I think anytime that we can have community involvement in development of anything is important. So I would say yes to that they should be absolutely involved. We're using their money to build it, so.
Technically, developers' money.
More or less, yes, developer money, yes. So, Councilor Spoon?
Yeah, I'm all for getting it in front of the public and having conversation. I think some particularly interesting points of input would be, and I think something the design won't include, correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry, is there's a wide breadth of, like, for lack of better word, dog activities. I know, like, some dog parks have like sand pits now because some dogs like to dig and it directs them there instead of elsewhere, and some have tunnels or whatnot. So if there are enrichment activities, I don't know what the right word is, I would be particularly interested, because I think the engineering will largely be done by then. Their input's still valid, but I think there's going to be a lot of room for input on kind of those, what kind of enrichment activities the community wants to see. No one dog is alike, I'm sure. So it'll be fun to see how we can diversify that and really engage and get families to play in there with their pets and what that looks like. So I don't know what we've planned for enrichment activities, but I'm really excited to see what the public would like to see in theirs as dog parks have evolved over time.
Yeah, the engineer, still going through the design piece. Like right now, we only have like the 30% drawing. So I'm sure there's more of those that will be coming up in subsequent drafts of it. So, and then, okay, so I'm hearing yes on that piece. And then the last other clarification question I had, what role do we want to see a final draft before it goes to the planning commission, or we just want it to go right to the planning commission, and if they have no problem, then we're good with whatever they present and approve? Yes, Councilor Banks.
What was that process when we added the Legacy Park, which I believe was our most recent addition of a park? I was certainly not on the council. I have no idea what
I was
the
not
normal.
either, so I don't know.
Oh, it was that long ago?
Yeah.
I don't mean to.
I know I've got some more gray hair than
Apologize for that.
last time, yeah.
I don't know what normal is or standard.
I don't-
Putting a new park in.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. I mean, we
Well, there's a couple of clarifications that we could make that might be helpful, and I know Scott had written out a page and a half
think
here,
we're doing
single
it right
space.
now.
So to try to kind of bring to you
Sorry,
guys.
Scott.
So as we've tried to bring this and ready it as much as we could with the anticipation of the end of this, the adoption of the draft master plan, now the master plan, and congratulations. One of the things that we've looked at is regular development, right? We would request a traffic study. And it just so happens that this particular place is already being used mostly as a dog park. Maybe there might be some increase of activity because maybe more people will go to one that has a fence around it, or might go to one that they don't have to park in gravel, they get to park in a parking lot. But when we started looking at, the city put on a different hat and said, okay, if I'm going to be a developer, I'm going to try to represent the development of this and see how fast I can get it done. And there's really two pieces of this, and the county's looking at potentially just answering their portion of it outside of the UGB as a administrative without having to go to a hearings officer because it's at a level where they're making a fence and just a trail. Well, the city side is just a bathrooms and a parking lot, right? So when we started to ask, is this really a major deal or is it a minor deal in terms of outright permitted use in R1, because the city side is R1, the county side is RRFF5. And so it's an outright permitted use, government-owned property in terms of theirs. Well, it just so happens that if it's minor, then and adding a parking lot to technically what is also Eco Park and is zoned R1, if it is considered minor, and minor is defined as not significant impacts to motor or foot traffic. So there we have a traffic study that we're asking for, that, or really an analysis that says, is the change in current use to a little bit accelerated of the same use going to be enough that we would consider it to be major, or is it going to be minor? If it's minor, it's an outright permitted use, and then it's either type 1 or type 2 decision, which might not have to go in front of the planning commission. So so we're waiting on our traffic expert, DKS, to opine whether it's a significant enough amount of motor or foot traffic in order to make that determination, because our planning department wants to treat us as a developer like they would any other developer. But if that information comes back in the positive for us, then it's a minor thing, and we can go forward and design or use our own administrative process, not have to go through a hearings body just like the county side.
No, and we should be, I mean, I don't think we should be leapfrogging because we're the city and, at all, and we need to follow queuing just like everybody else. And I think not having to go to the planning commission probably saves us some
money and time and everything
money
else.
and time on this thing. That the county piece sounds like that might be a little bit more of a sticky wicket.
Well, they are looking at, and I'm taking his thunder now entirely. Yeah, but the part of the issue there is the uses on the surface don't seem to be an issue at all. It's the underlying irrigation that then has become questionable because they want people to look at that. It's a little problematic because it's outside of our city system, and because it's outside of our UGB, we have CUB kind of asking those questions and the county asking those questions. So those are determinations that have yet to be made at both of those political subdivisions, and we keep banging the drum and trying to keep them with an eye for it. And there's been some staff turnover at one of those agencies, and then there has been a need for some to think that their council needs to and I should say counsel, meaning lawyer.
The attorney.
Yeah, has to opine for CUB, and then their board has to be able to vote on it. So that's what we're waiting for as far as the irrigation portion. Other than that, we hopefully should be able to proceed with administratively at the county level.
So, again, go back to Counselor Spoon's point about the activities and tchotchkes that are added to a dog park, those will end up on the county side of the development piece. And I know we're only at the 30%, but so as the drawings and engineering gets completed, that obviously a finished product will end up going to the county for them to stamp and approve.
So this is something I get to use from, I just went to the real estate and land use annual conference over on the coast.
Good
and
for
we,
you.
Thank you. And we had, well, you guys kind of ordered me to do that. That was one of the things you wanted me to do. So, but
Still, but good for you, Joe. Thanks for following our direction.
But, okay, so
employee.
we had a engineer that was telling us, asking all of us, like, what do you know about 30%, 60%, 90% drawings? Because in the speak of engineering, right, they say it isn't actually technically that it's 30% complete, you know, like normally we would think. It's that it kind of reaches a level of standard and detail. Well, actually, our level and standard of detail in our drawings are far beyond that 30%. So just to let you know, it's probably closer to like the 60% or even coming up. And that's useful because if we had that pre-app meeting with the county and kind of fleshed out all of those details, and then Jerry and Kurt McLeod were able to kind of incorporate those things a little more closely. And then that helps us price, because then we know what's going to, you know, be useful and working and whatnot. So the plans themselves could be utilized because they're detailed enough to go ahead and try to get to that permission stage, that permit stage. But calling it one or the other, it just means the amount of detail that somebody would like to see in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Parker.
And again, this is kind of awkward because this is your mayor's comment, and we're,
Well, no, it's still, I mean, I opened up the can.
well, who isn't for public engagement and involvement? But I think the question is, what is the question we're going to ask? I remember very specifically when we did the public hearing or the public engagement on this building, we already had the plans and designs, and somebody wanted us to move the bathroom. And we had designs on where the pipes were going and the plumbing, and it wasn't just the thing of moving it across to have it closer to the doorway. I think we need to learn that lesson in our future things of what is it that we really want to know when we're asking people for their opinions, because there's probably a scope of work where we can make some adjustment, and that's where I'd like to hear from people.
Okay. So kind of like that, really what we've done in the past, sometimes like we come with 3 renderings for the.
Something like that.
I mean, I like one, but I also like 3. Can we combine that kind of a.
And the classic example was when TriMet expanded out to the Expo Center, and they had their public engagement. This is held up as really the classic model of it. That they had meetings with the businesses along the area, and they said, we want your opinions. We don't want to know if you don't want to have this go through your business community, because we know the answer is no, but it is going to happen. What we do want to know is how we can make it better for you.
It sounds like my tolling conversations. Yeah, so I think probably bringing that closer to a further into the process than later is what I'm hearing. Okay. Scott, or Mr. Archer, you wanted to add something?
Sure. Well, thank you for the conversation, Mayor. Between Mayor Hodson and Joe's information you've given, I was going to give this under my reports in a little bit, but I think you've covered the majority of it. I just wanted to, there are just a couple of additional pieces that I wanted to hit on to make sure that we've given the full thing, if you don't mind. I think I'm also kind of jumping into your mayor's report, but
I did that for
since
you,
the conversation is now, I think it's appropriate.
We'll check off all of our boxes.
Yeah. So, yes, as it's already been pretty well summarized, we've since the council previously gave staff direction, it was in December of 21, for those past several months, and I want to give credit to Jerry and Jeff, and actually Ryan and Don have been working hard, and Joe's been involved. We've been working on that council direction to basically tee this up from the planning perspective. And I think Joe said it a minute ago, the direction we heard was when we complete the master plan, and there is a recommendation in there for a dog park, and it's in the upper tier of that, then we can have this conversation to say, here we go. So we've been working really hard. We're kind of at the mercy of some of these planning issues. We've also had to move through some of the things where we had to go out and survey the property, even though a good bit of discussion happened in preliminary work back in 2012, 13. That plan that we had was a kind of a rough site plan that we're using as the foundation for where we're at now. There wasn't a survey done, and it wasn't quite to the level of standard that we needed to really actually take it to the planning processes. So we had to quickly engage. We had to do a survey, and Jerry went out and got that done really quickly, considering the environment of getting consultants right now that we're in. We had to get an engineer on board as quickly as we could. We did that. We had to do a few different revisions of the engineering plans because there was some back and forth on, well, the utilities kind of need to be over here and they can't be over there. And so there was a good bit of back and forth. And then we got to the point where we had something that we could legitimately submit to the planning agencies, us being one of them, the county being the other. As was noted, we're still waiting for some of those responses. We've got basically the way that it was described to me is the county saw no major obstacles and tentatively believes that the portion in their jurisdiction can be reviewed administratively, even though that extending city utilities into the outside the UGB is a little atypical. It seems like they, hopefully we'll come to an answer of yes, but that's not been given yet. They're doing some review. So when we get that, and then those little other things that have already been mentioned. But the point about the traffic analysis letter, and Mr. Hardy is already working on that. He's engaged DKS, our traffic engineering consultant. I wanted to inform you that process from point of engagement to getting a full answer and a full letter is about 3 to 4 weeks. So we're moving through that right now, and then that's the piece where if that traffic analysis letter determines that the traffic impact is not significant, then that's when we get into that the permitting process might be a type 1, keeping it within not having to go to planning commission. That is not an absolute answer yet, but we're exploring that, and ultimately we'll make that decision. But if that is deemed to be a type 1 permitting process, then the schedule would look approximately like this. And then I wanted to tag on to your question, Mayor, and the discussion about some other public input or some other process here. Traffic assessment scoping is happening. The traffic analysis letter, we would anticipate between September 9 to 16, so in that week. Type 1 site plan application preparation and approval by September 30th, assuming that Cobb and Clackamas County will permit those things that we talked about. Once that is finalized, from that point, then we've got our approvals at least from the planning jurisdictions. It would take us about 60 days to do those. So Joe just talked about the 30%, 70% planning. What we have plans. What that's about is the conceptual site plan drawings. We then have to take those and turn those into a giant technical document that we put out to bid. That's the bid document. That takes about 60 days. We anticipate a 14-day bidding timeline, and then turning that back over to council for approval. I guess my question is kind of a follow-up is if there's an expectation of some other process worked into that with the the Parks Board and some, perhaps if there's a community meeting or something of that nature, we would want to be doing that concurrently while these other things are already going on so that we didn't wait. Because I think we've got enough information and, you know, that we're pretty close to I think a concept, a site plan that looks like it's going to be relatively close. It's getting into those more granular details, like the types of amenities that go in. I think we've got some pretty hard and fast boundaries at this site that we can work with the utility placement. Where the parking lot can really go is pretty limited, where the bathrooms can go, you know, the fenced off area, which is mostly in the unincorporated area. But what kinds of amenities do we want to see within that? I think are some of the major questions that are left to be determined. But so that's kind of the timeline, and I want to make sure everybody understood that. But within that, if there's an expectation that we have this additional public input, how you kind of foresee that, and you know, again, we would want to look at doing that now, concurrent to the rest of these processes. So I think between the discussion here, we've hit all those points that I was going to touch on as well. So.
Great. Okay. I'm going to move on. To finish out my parks report, they are starting to have conversation on kind of the recreation side of things based on what was laid out in the master plan. So they were looking at Wilsonville Park and Rec, their activity guide, as well as the Chehalem Park and Rec District and their community center / pool area and kind of things that they run out of there. So they're already starting to do some brainstorming on that. And then Bike and Ped is going to be coming forward to us about, with a safety ask about some blind spots around the Forest Road Trail around 4th Avenue Bridge there. There's just some blind spots that they want to bring towards for us to consider. There was an 205 diversion subcommittee meeting today. The big thing today was talking about modeling, and so ODOT, as we know, lives and dies by their modeling, and so when they're looking at like traffic pieces of for 205, as well as what they're looking at in terms of capacity, what tolling will look at. They're looking at activities like what will different households, freight traffic, bicycle utility network, and then so those all kind of play into the modeling piece. And then they're looking at so the modeling assumptions, they went back and they have a base calibration year from 2015, and their future forecasting is looking at 2027 and then at 2045. So they're looking at land use assumptions and then future networking pieces. The big thing came up was that their toll rate assumptions right now that they're using is, so morning peak time would be $1.90 for each gantry. And then if you had to go through both gantries on 205, it'd be about $3.80 is what they're using currently for their assumptions. And then evening peak time, so that's 4 to 6 or 4 to 6:30. Both gates would end up being, let's see what did I put here, it was going to be almost $2.40 for each gate for the evening peak time. So that's kind of, those are and whatnot. So that was the big fun piece on that. Yes, Sarah.
Did they give any insights on what they anticipated, like non-peak times to scale at?
They did not call those dollars amounts out.
Oh, how convenient.
Specifically in their assumptions.
No offense though.
Yeah, so
that's unusual.
It's shocking. So I was at the Oregon Mayors Association conference, and which was great. We did breakout sessions on housing, land use, upcoming legislation session, and then talking of homelessness as well. Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, big thing coming up is that we have a Q&A with the Oregon Transportation Commission Chair,
Rob Van Brocklin at our next meeting to discuss the tolling and hopefully better partnering with Clackamas County. I want to say thank you to Zord Lutheran Church, the Canby Adult Center, the Canby Center, Denny's for being cooling stations here this summer during these hot days. I think tomorrow's going to be another, I think, potential triple-digit day. So if you're out there, check on your neighbors, check on your friends, especially our seniors, and make sure that they're okay. Some things coming up. Canby's Big Night Out is coming up here at the end of the month. Canby's Big Weekend. So you got Swan Island Dahlias, the Basil Festival, the Cutsforth Cruise In, and then I think Slice of Summer has one concert left, two, one. This Sunday's their last one. So that's my piece. Councilor Farring, do you have anything?
Nope.
Okay. Councilor Bangs?
Just like that.
None? No. Okay. Councilor Marine?
I did attend the Canby Utility Board meeting last week, and they had there wasn't a lot going on, but they continue to have really good results financially, so they've got good reserves and everything's as we would hope they would be. The question came up about charging stations for automobiles, and they couldn't answer the question. They said to ask Jerry. So maybe we'll hear more on that later. They're also getting a new piece of equipment that they're very excited about. As apparently it digs as much within about a half hour as the equipment they have now can do in a day.
Okay.
So it's going to be very efficient and probably very expensive.
Got to use all those reserves.
Yeah, I was going to say, there goes the reserves. Thank you, Councilor Marine. Councilor Spoon?
Couple of things hold on, let me switch back over. Canby Area Transit, with the return to school, and as most of the parents know, the hours of schooling is changing. Canby is adjusting its loop schedule. So if your children intend to utilize Canby Area Transit to go to and from school or go somewhere after school or before outside of home, just take a look at their Facebook page or their website, because there are some adjustments to their schedule starting September 6th with the beginning of school, which is great. I love to see it being utilized to serve all of our families. And then also a couple of things. It's Fair Week, which means that on Tuesday we had the Kitty Caper Parade. And I just want to acknowledge Kiwanis. I learned a couple of things this week. This was actually the 74th year that the Kiwanis hosted the Kitty Caper Parade, which is pretty spectacular. But we actually think they have documentation going back an additional 14 years that there has been a kids parade in Canby, which would make this at least the 88th parade that they can document kids parade. So that's pretty cool stuff. And then I also thought, as we move through the Parks Master Plan, there are a number of items that are kind of the low-hanging fruit that I know that the Parks Committee has been looking for. And I'd love to talk about when we can have a conversation about asking the Parks Committee to come with costing for like turfing the fields, lighting, improvements of the trail system, like benches, bathrooms, extras, some of that like easier stuff that's easier to accomplish than building just, we can't build a park every 6 months, but we can make incremental improvements in our existing systems that we've kind of been held back for. But also with the upcoming conversation about the pool lease agreement, I would really love the Parks Committee's insights into what they see as kind of the minimum standards of a lease for us to invest in the pool. Like, what would that look like if we couldn't purchase the property? What are the Parks Committee's thoughts on what kind of that minimum threshold is for we need at least this to invest $1 million, $2 million into the pool? So getting kind of their thoughts on some of those things and what that looks like. I think getting some of that costing information could be pretty exciting, because I think we can multitask. We can build a park and do some incremental improvements in other parks. And I don't know about you all, but I think that council and the town of Canby and the Parks Committee, we've all kind of been racehorses waiting for the gate to open. So I'm ready to kind of get some of that costing in line and have conversation about it. So I'm sure there are other things on the list. That was just my short list of things that I think we could accomplish in relatively quick succession, but also really wanting their insight on lease requirements or purchase requirements for the pool. I think it's important to include them in that conversation as we near that conversation again, so.
Okay. And Chair Johnson is here feverishly writing that down, I saw. So, okay. Councilor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I did report back to the Canby Adult Center, and there were a lot of questions about what we're going to do next to ensure that they have land underneath them, that they're not going to get kicked off. And I said that the discussions are continuing. So there was that. The bike committee, yes, is looking at improving some safety on the a blind spot there. They somehow think you don't want to have any paint on the ground, arrows and that sort of thing.
I don't?
Yeah, I don't know if you ever actually said that, but they were saying, well, we can't do that because the mayor. I'll get back to them and say that's okay.
I don't think I've said that. I actually suggested putting in bollards on either side of the blind spot so people would have to get off their bikes and walk it. So that, they didn't.
You should be impressed by the gravitas you carry on that committee, saying, well, we can't consider it because the mayor doesn't want it, even though you haven't commented on it.
I think you were talking about stenciling.
Yeah.
Doing
so
it,
we'll try and get that straightened out. And then finally, I'm going to be sending a card to our former recorder, Kim Schaefer. I noticed today that our agenda packet was 365 pages. Now, imagine if instead of having it on this, we would have those printed up.
We used to. Remember the binder?
And we used to. So Kim, who is now working in the city of Lebanon, was the one who helped us through this transition. But I think it's been a while since we pointed out just how much paper and staff time it has allowed us to do. I know some people see us up here and we're not playing Pokemon Go on our computers. We're trying to scroll up and down to find the relevant points. But thank you, Kim. It shows how a city is a multi-generational thing. We're all here for a short amount of time, and hopefully each of us get a chance to make a contribution.
Great, thank you. Council President Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, along with Mr. Archer and Jamie Stickle and Tyler Nizer, attended a 25th celebration, anniversary celebration for Shimatsu. So it was an honor to be able to be a part of their event and congratulate them.
On behalf of the city.
I did, and I didn't die. So, and yeah, but it was an honor to be able to be a part of their special day. So I wanted to extend congratulations to the viewing audience so they know that we've had them as a partner in our community for 25 years and they're still going strong. I had the Traffic Safety Commission meeting and they're I guess taking another look at the idea of the red flex cameras. So that discussion is going on. And there was some discussion about some county roads coming into the city, and I'll mess that up. So if Jerry, could you come up and we just want to float this out there for something for you all to chew on, because there was a proposal, and I'll mess it up. Jerry, you take it.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Hensley. Yeah, they earmarked some more money for some roads for us to take over to take a look at, and our city administrator and I actually had a meeting with Mike Besner, Clackamas County, I don't know what, a month or so ago, and he wanted to know if we were still interested, so I kind of ran it through traffic safety. It was 3 roads that they want to throw at us. Southeast 13th from Malino Road to Sequoia Parkway, out where the new construction's going. Mm-hmm. Southeast 1st from Walnut to Malino Road, over in front of Columbia Distributing, kind of by where our Walnut Street extension will take off. And then North Pine from basically the whole thing, from just past 10th all the way to Territorial. And I was talking to Mr. Archer we were going on the two roads, First and 13th Avenue, we've actually overlaid already because of development and stuff that we've done, putting in a sewer pump station are in really good shape. And I got excited about those, but Pine got thrown in there because they want to do that. And I went to the
Now they want to
traffic.
turn it over.
Yeah, and went to the traffic safety, and that's where we ended up with that. And they were kind of giving us kind of some direction that they kind of wanted to stay away from that on their end, just because we'll inherit all the complaints, all that stuff, and money and time to do it. So
And did you tell them we get those already?
yes,
Okay.
there's been plenty of comments. They actually also, after that meeting with that, they sent a revised quote of just the two roads, just of what they would pitch in. And they're giving us the $100 a ton and the $6,500 an ADA ramp. So it's a fair deal for the two roads. So
can you counter with a 20% increase?
well, actually, our city administrator got like 35,000 out of them by by coming to the meeting. So he,
So if we take
so
it
I
to,
don't know how that, but they increased it on here, 35,000 from, what is it, 80, it went from $80 a ton to $100 a ton. So whatever the math comes out on that, I figured.
and that's
on
for the
that.
13th and the First Avenue.
Yeah, for First Avenue.
So if we
and
take
Thurston.
just those two, it can Pine be a discussion later?
We
when
could,
We can
yes.
talk better money from
But-
them on that project?
But in the conversation that Mr. Archer and I had during that, he and Mike Besner indicated that he had been communicating with you, Mayor, and stuff. So we kind of want to just throw that out there tonight, and I appreciate you letting me take your part on this.
Yeah, sure. I wanted them to be able to noodle that, but I knew you had the numbers, and then you did indicate there was different numbers than we talked about at the commission meeting, so thank you
And
for offering
Scott,
that.
did you have anything to add on that? 'Cause
No, that was a good summary. I think the idea was we were just kind of allowing the county to pitch make their pitch to us on that and see how much funding we could get from them, and then letting it kind of work through the process a little bit before we brought it to the council for your discussion. And we'll, like we've done with other county road transfers in the last year or so, we'd bring a full presentation to you with the drawings and show you exactly what we're talking about. I think this is just a preliminary kind of float the balloon out, right?
Right.
No, and this again goes back to, I think, with a long time mission to get what is in our jurisdiction, ours to take care of, and so that we can truly honor those complaints and not just coal patch it and whatnot. Initial blush, Malino to Sequoia on 13th there that gives me heartburn.
Yep.
You're saying from Malino Road to Sequoia on 13th?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's that curve.
Yes.
Down past that burned out old farmhouse right down there, correct?
Correct.
And
That
only
is
a
correct.
small section of that's in the city limits, right? They're actually giving us some road that should be there.
Right.
Because usually we want what should be ours, and now they're like, have some additional
Here,
county
take
road.
I
this off
believe
our
the
hands.
city limits is to center line,
It is.
all the way down. And the other half, so there would be, yeah,
To the corner, to the railroad.
To the road.
yeah, there would be two IGAs for that because of that. So we would, yeah.
I didn't, we need to talk that one out.
And that's why we
Yeah,
wanted to
change
throw this
them.
out here to see if you guys had the capacity or wanted to entertain this. The county was like, just let us know if it's not a real interest and you guys don't have the time to do this, they would look to other cities.
So I guess basically the ask
But
from the colleagues here is, do we want to have a work session or just give consensus to Scott to go forth? But I was kind of thinking maybe a work session would be in order, but that's my ask, I guess. What do you want to do?
The only one I have a lot of heartburn over is the 13th down to Malino, because that's a hairy little road there. But I'll also be curious about staff recommend. I would like to talk more about that line, but if I'm the only one that wants to talk more about that one, I don't want to like hold up a process. I have a little bit of heartburn over that section of road.
I think we got a general idea that, yes, we want to entertain it and have conversation.
Yep.
You know, and so you guys converse and I'll work with Scott on timeline on that.
North Pine,
I think all of them.
all of them. Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
But we know that they've got problem children as part of this scenario, that I appreciate that Mr. Archer's been able to get more money out of the county
Oh,
on
yeah,
that.
we'll get him to the next meeting.
So, I'll work on Mr. Belzner a little bit.
That would help.
So, as well as maybe a couple of the planning commissioners, or sorry, county commissioners. It is an election year,
They've been asking me for money.
so I want money from them, so.
Yeah, right? And the only other thing I had was a question. I'm wondering if we've had any movement in the discussions with maybe getting a joint work session with the school board to discuss that land use or that land lease agreement.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jerry.
Well, I think part of the issue is the timing, is the school board is on summer recess. And so essentially my conversation with the superintendent has been, he can't really have that conversation until they're back in session, which is September or something.
I think they come back
So-
in a week or two.
Yeah. So my thought was, and I think the mayor and I had a very brief conversation, but perhaps a follow-up conversation with you to kind of strategize a little further, but I'll work with the mayor on agenda items for that.
That's all I have.
Great. Mr. Archer.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a few items, and first of all, thank you for letting me tag team onto your dog park update, so you just saved me about 10 minutes there. Quiet zone, we are going to have a quiet zone. It's official. I signed the final documents this week, and we electronically sent them back. The quiet zone will be official as of August 29th at 7 a.m. That is the official date. Now, I think people have already said that maybe some of the trains are coming through already not honking and starting to get that idea early, which is cool. And I think we're talking about make sure all the signage is unveiled already, but that is the official date for certain. And then the arch, of course, that project is mostly completed. We have some of the plaques and then the time capsule pieces to finalize, but we're going to do the grand opening, not while you're all away at League of Cities Conference. Apologies to you on that, but we're going to do that on November 3rd, first Thursday in November. If you'll be patient with me, we'll give you a time certain where we're kind of fine tuning that based on what we think is going to work the best. It'll be late afternoon or early evening, I think somewhere in there. So November 3, and we'll be sending out lots of info and reminders to you, of course. Ivy Street Power Undergrounding Project. Work has been continuing to progress. The undergrounding is nearly complete from 99 to almost to Township. The overhead lines and poles, I think mostly are still in place, and those get removed later down the road, but the undergrounding itself has been happening and moving along as you had previously authorized. Summer road construction activity and some road projects coming up. I think the mayor might have hit on a couple of these when he was mentioning about some of the park stuff, but just to let you all know. So in this coming week, we will begin working on the new four-way stop with crosswalks at Territorial and Redwood. New sidewalk on Territorial connecting the Eco Park parking lot over basically to Redwood and where the future planned dog park will be, where it connects into the Public Works Road, access road. At the same time, we're going to be working on a new storm sewer line installed along Territorial Road near Redwood. New ADA ramps at the Malala Forest Road crossing on Territorial. And then Locust Street from 4th to 10th. Locust Street between 4th and 10th, we're basically doing a full road improvement there with new roadway, new sidewalks, and all that. So lots of road improvement projects happening beginning soon. And then the last item I have is the Knightsbridge Road Bridge. we've received some information from Clackamas County. That's a Clackamas County bridge. This is a notice many months in advance, but just to start kind of getting the word out and to let you all know that the county is going to be doing a major bridge repair project next summer of '23. The repairs are going to include painting, sealing cracks on the deck, resurfacing the deck, repairing the concrete columns and bridge approaches, and seismic upgrades. They will be closing the bridge to all traffic for approximately 4 to 6 months at the bridge site during construction. So please call the county.
Wait until 99 is done though, right?
Well, that's the question I was going to ask is how does that affect with the redoing of 99? I know that's a big concern on social media out there is.
Excellent
if
question.
The bridge is closed and 99 is closed.
It's a great question, and I need to have some conversations with Mr. Nalzine about that and talk to some of our partners there. But I just wanted to let you know that we literally have just recently received that info, and that's kind of a heads up. I haven't spoken with anybody at the county either about this, so I think we'll talk to the county roads folks as well as to ODOT and see who's talking or not talking to whom. Because that is a concern. So yes, thank you for that comment.
That would tell ODOT something about what tolling would do if Knight's Bridge was closed and people couldn't go through 99 either.
Yep. Great.
That's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, may I add one thing? The Canby's Big Weekend is coming up. That street dance, right, is on Friday, the 26th. Super fun. We went last year and had a ball. I think I saw everybody here there. But yeah, so probably have to do a quorum notice for you guys as well, because I think you'll all probably be there. But just getting lost sometimes in the shuffle is the fun stuff we do too. So
Perfect. It's next opportunity for citizen input. And I have some cards. Thank you. First up is Lana Bollinger and wants to address us on the update on the trees on Territorial and Echo Park. Mine as well.
On the 20th of July, that last month, talking to you folks about about a third of an acre, I think, I'm just guessing, it's a lot of measurements, of trees that are part of the Tom Scott property along Territorial. And if I heard and processed correctly, there were 3 points. One of them was the city lawyer was going to try to reach out to Mr. Scott about trading closing contractors' costs. I'm not sure that's the right term for those trees, the ground they're standing on. Sarah Spoon said something about enhancing or adding planning codes that would include the protection of existing trees when we're dealing with developers and not just letting them clear cut and land and then doing something on top of it. And I think the third one was a question of mine about, that's occurred to me is, can we pass an ordinance or a law or something like that that has to do with preserving open spaces in Canby as well as existing trees? Can you write an ordinance and make it part of the municipal code or the comprehensive plan or an amendment that addresses that situation? If you had the will to do it, can it be done? So those are my 3 items. So,
well, I believe you guys gave me consensus to go ahead and call Tom Scott. I did. It was a very short conversation. He said, because he acknowledged he knew who I was talking about because you had talked to him on a couple of different occasions. He said, I said, well, is there really any way to buy this. And he laughed and said, well, it's such a high price. And then he said, to be quite honest, the only thing he would even entertain at all would be some sort of land swap, but really he was going forward with his building. So that didn't seem to be a serious negotiation. And so that's where it ended.
Okay, so I took him at his word. When I was talking to him, I didn't see a tongue in his cheek or a giggle or anything. I assumed what he said to me was what he thought or what was a possibility. So ever onward with the idea of protecting existing trees and some open spaces. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's still something we'd like to pursue. We can't make, or I would like to pursue, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but it's just what I learned when I became part of city government is that everything takes significantly longer than I want it to. So I think that's conversations that it would have to go through code and planning and whatnot. So it's definitely a conversation I've had with you after the fact and that I'm moving towards. It's going to take some time, and there's several steps of review for having some. So I think we called it like a canopy program, and I'm still an advocate for that. I need to get some consensus, and planning probably. I know they're overloaded, but it has to go through a process like that to become part of our city code. So it's just going to be a long process to get there.
That you are entertaining it?
I certainly am, and I've talked to city staff about it after the meeting, but it's something that would have to come before all of council, and there would have to be broad discussion. I can't speak for anyone but myself, but yeah.
Okay. We all have families, and we love them and we want to protect them, especially our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And I would propose that we adopt a long-term thinking about our great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren. And I hope that in the year 3050 or 4000, that there will be people sitting in Canby that are our great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren that will be thanking us for what we have done to preserve their environment and keep the air clean. So I don't know if I can write you essays or ordinance of my own that I can present to you, or how I can be involved in this somehow. I do wish that you would consider a committee of at least half a dozen people that are concerned with the environment, that can bring you issues and give you ideas and have you respond with some kind of positive action. The time to stop cutting down trees was 50 years ago. The time to be planting trees was 50 years ago. We haven't been doing it. I read an article in the Smithsonian recently. I'm going to make it short, but Benjamin Franklin complained that when he first moved into his digs, everybody used wood as fuel, and they'd go out and cut a tree down next to the house. And in his lifetime, he said that he had to go at least 100 miles to order wood to be brought back to his house in order to burn wood for his fireplace. So this isn't a problem that just started in 1960 or last week or something. I want you all to think about the air and the environment when you make decisions. It's important. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Larry. Sure.
Well, you have made a difference. You've really touched my heart. And since the last time you've been here, I've been doing a little bit of reading into the idea of urban canopy equity. As we face warmer summers, the places in our cities where it's the hottest are the places without trees. And that's true in Canby as well, that our most economically disadvantaged neighborhoods have the fewest amount of trees. I think it's going to take a couple of angles to get to where you and now I want to get to. But we are forming a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force. And I certainly see that as addressing the inequity we have with our urban canopy. It's going to take a while to do this, but it is a virtuous fight, and you have brought this to us, so thank you.
Well, thank you for listening.
Thanks, Lana. Mr. Barry Johnson.
Good evening. It's past my bedtime, too. I just wanted to address the council in regards to the dog park again. Our Parks Board, the Parks Advisory Board, is not against a dog park, okay? We are fully behind a dog park. I guess what we are asking again, or where we've differed, is putting in a dog park in an area that is more fiscally responsible or beneficial to the community. I know a lot of numbers have been thrown around, $770,000, $900,000, $1 million. Everybody talking, big dollars. Certainly there are other options, and I think we brought those forward at one time at a meeting where we asked to maybe consider the police station or Malala State Park, to look at and vet those locations as you vetted this location out here. I guess we asked, for that opportunity. Our Parks Advisory Board almost unanimously is against the dog park in that location. And we've expressed that in letters and in a number of different ways. I'm not on social media, I don't do it, and will never do it. So I know that there's been a lot of conversation. I think going out to the public and making a public, display, showing them what is planned, maybe that'll generate some conversation that we haven't heard. I think a lot of people feel that spending that kind of money, we'll say $900,000 on a dog park, if we could build it elsewhere for $700,000, wouldn't the citizens be, that's a savings of $200,000. Or if we could build it for $500,000. I don't know, because we never vetted it. We never looked at it. We didn't look at any other options. Okay, it was just focus on that one spot and that's it. And we're not gonna take a look at any others. So we, as a Parks Board, have voted against. I know, and it came off that it was, we want to wait till after the Parks Master Plan was done. And it did say dog park. And again, we're not against the dog park. It's the location and the cost. And we could do it cheaper elsewhere. So that's what I wanted to have to say. One other option, put your parking lot in and leave it open and leave it as an open area dog park and put the fenced area down by the police station. Then you've got two dog parks, one on each end of the city for what you might be paying for one. So, I don't know, that's my small tidbit, so.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, appreciate it.
Chris?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, we don't own the state park, so we can't really build a dog park there. And the Honda pits don't satisfy the requirements that the Parks Committee recommended that we use.
What is that?
Not alongside residential area, not on sloped ground of greater than 5%.
It could be graded.
Not along heavy traffic. And
It's not along heavy traffic.
There's a train that goes through there adjacent to that land.
It's gonna be inside the quiet zone. It's gonna be inside the quiet zone.
Have you
You've got
stood next to a
major-
train as it
you've-
drives by?
You've got major traffic coming down Territorial, and it becomes busier all the time. You have a road, a public access road, going back to a fire station, and there are gonna be sirens
There's a
from
police station
emergency.
at the Honda pits. That's a,
Well, they don't
Same
sound
thing.
they don't sound the
Gentlemen.
sirens coming out of there.
Gentlemen,
so I'm just saying, I looked over those recommendations. I also read the AKC recommendations for dog park siting. They say that they should be on the edges of town. And I just don't think that those Honda pits work for a dog park. We did look at that, but we made the decision in December to locate this thing alongside Territorial.
Well, and it was,
generally, public comment is not generally a back and forth. And
Sure.
Mr. Johnson, I thank you for your comments. I appreciate you coming again and
Okay.
speaking your piece about the Parks Advisory Board and the dog park piece. I appreciate that. Thank you.
okay.
All right, that ends the cards I have. Action review.
You have approved the consent agenda as amended, passed ordinance numbers 1582, 1583, and 1584 as amended to a second reading on September 7th, 2022, and adopted resolution number 1376.
Thank you very much. Before I take a motion to adjourn, reminder that our next meeting's in September. We'll be starting at 7 o'clock, not the usual 7:30. So change your calendars, adjust your clocks, alarms, whatever. That officially starts our 7 o'clock start time for city council meetings. So 7 on the 7th. All right, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone want to stay? Not seeing any. Canby, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.